Full Metal Storm, Battle of the Machines. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 545 Attack and Defense. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a shrill alarm sounded over the entire coyote camp. The men in the camp all looked stern and then tightly grasped their rifles. These people were not soldiers and had not received systematic training. Some of them had just learned how to shoot, but now they all had to go to the battlefield. Liu looked at them and said, "This is our home. The only home we have now. If we can't defend it, we will all die. As for whether you want to follow us, you can choose for yourself. It's okay if you don't want to fight, but you have to leave." After saying that, Liu walked out of the camp. The men looked at each other. A bearded man tightened his rifle in his hand. "Fight them. Fight them." The men finally followed Liu. Just like Liu said, Coyote Camp is their home. Especially after Cheng Baizhen's death, Liu was very generous to the residents of the camp, and the residents were unwilling to abandon Liu and the camp at this time. Moreover, even if they left the camp, they might not be able to survive. Without the protection of the camp, the men were fine, but the women, children, and fathers might not even survive a week. No matter what their reasons were, Liu now had at least 100 militiamen available. He came to the camp's guard wall and looked out of the camp. Outside the camp, on the horizon far away in the wilderness, the sun at 4 o'clock in the afternoon was dazzling, and visibility was great. Even without a telescope, Liu could see that a team appeared on the horizon, slowly rushing towards the camp. Yang Tao and others who had been sent out for reconnaissance had reported the composition of this convoy. This convoy had 8 tanks, 12 off-road vehicles, and a wheeled armored command vehicle. There should be more than 300 soldiers. Such a ratio was enough to sweep a large number of camps in the wilderness. Liu made a gesture, and several anti-aircraft machine guns were set up around the camp. They were all controlled by powerful firepower hands, and now long ammunition belts had been installed on the machine guns. Next to them, there were boxes of bullets ready. In the distance, the Iron Horse mercenaries were already hiding in an ambush point. They had prepared battlefield weapons such as rocket launchers. But even with some preparation, the rocket launcher shells were still insufficient. And this time, the main force of the attacking Huangquan was obviously cautious enough. On the horizon, as they advanced, the vehicles and soldiers had begun to disperse. The 8 tanks were like 8 arrows, spreading out and pointing in different directions of the camp. Among them, the 2 tanks on the left and right wings had a tendency to bypass the main battlefield and attack the camp from the side or even the rear. 12 off-road vehicles equipped with anti-aircraft machine guns were also dispersed and lagged behind the tanks by a large distance, obviously arranged as the second echelon. This kind of chariot with high mobility and heavy firepower is very threatening in such a small-scale local battlefield. They will use their mobility to focus on the enemy's vulnerable parts, and the anti-aircraft machine guns on the vehicle can ensure sufficient firepower, enough to knock out some firepower points. Finally, a large number of soldiers dispersed, relying on chariots or tanks. 3 to 4 people formed a combat unit, and 3 combat units formed a team. In this way, the commander of Huangquan can flexibly command according to the needs of the battlefield. At the same time, the scattered soldiers make it impossible for weapons such as rocket launchers to play the greatest effect. This time, there was no warning. There was no threat. As soon as Huangquan appeared, they began to attack. While advancing, the tanks began to bombard the shelters of the coyote camp. The long gun barrels pointed at the camp and fired one after another. Boom. The sound of artillery continued. One after another, the shells fell into the shelters built in front of the coyote camp, creating explosions again and again. Facing the preemptive tank soldiers, the coyote camp basically had no good way to deal with it, and could only temporarily avoid the edge. Everyone tried to hide as much as possible to avoid being exposed. Those militiamen hiding in the trenches even held their helmets and stuck to the side of the trench, not daring to show their heads at all. Under such bombardment, after a few minutes, the front line of the coyote camp was already filled with smoke and flames. Finally, the tank drove into the minefield. A tank was located in the center of the battlefield, driving straight into the front. Suddenly, a fire burst out from the bottom, causing the whole tank to shake, but it continued to move forward. Only flames and thick smoke came out from the bottom of the tank. Then, other tanks detonated, mines one after another, causing the 8 tanks to shake. One of them was unlucky. Just after entering the minefield, a track was blown off, so it had to stop. In the wheeled armored command vehicle, Luou, who looked neutral, said in surprise, "There is actually a minefield. These guys are well prepared." The commander in the car picked up the communicator and said calmly, "Clear the minefield." Immediately, a soldier took a machine gun and fired forward, detonating mines from time to time. Boom boom. In the minefield, mines kept exploding, splashing dust. However, the work of mine clearance cannot be completed in a short time. At the same time, because of the need to clear mines, the troops of Huangquan were forced to stay outside the minefield. At this time, Liu issued an order. The coyote camp is located in a town, and the camp only occupies a small part of the town. So outside the camp is an abandoned town. Most of the buildings outside the camp were cleared just to facilitate travel, thus forming a flat pattern. However, this only cleared the buildings on the ground, but the town's underground tunnel system was still preserved. With Liu's order, someone detonated the explosives buried in the underground tunnel in advance. When arranging the minefield, Liu considered what to do if the enemy had demeaning means and did not enter the minefield with all the troops. In response to this problem, he arranged explosives in the underground tunnel outside the minefield. Once the explosives are detonated, most of the surface outside the minefield will collapse, causing certain interference and impact on the enemy troops on the ground. Now, with the explosives in the underground tunnel being detonated, the ground was shaken immediately. Then huge cracks appeared, and then with a loud bang, a large area of the ground suddenly sank, causing the Huangquan soldiers above to fall down immediately. They didn't have time to react at all, and were crushed to death by the rubble. It was just because the Huangquan soldiers were scattered, so only a few of them sank with the ground. This really shocked Luou in the car. "Hey, these rats are pretty desperate." Luou snorted, looked at the commander and said, "You can't even deal with a few rats, right?" Chapter 546 All-Out Attack. It must be said that the coyote camp was well prepared. With the support of the resources of the Red Gate, both the personnel and the equipment were not comparable to those of ordinary survivor camps. This was the reason why they were able to shock the main force of Luou after cleaning up a vanguard team of Huangquan. However, the coyote camp's foundation was always limited. After blowing up an underground area and causing some trouble to Huangquan, the camp's disadvantages also began to emerge. In particular, after Huangquan had basically found out the hiding points of the coyote camp, they directly used rocket launchers and tanks' heavy artillery to eliminate them. Helpless. After seeing that the opponent's firepower advantage was far superior to his own, Liu could only fight and retreat, and began to retreat into the camp, trying to use the buildings in the camp to divide the troops of Huangquan. Luou's commander decisively let the troops rush in, and he divided the troops into 7 teams. Each team was led by a tank, which suppressed the enemy's firepower and provided cover, allowing the soldiers behind to enter the enemy area calmly and infiltrate the passages cleared by the artillery fire and engage in street fighting. In a window, Liu looked at the tank in the distance and shouted with a communicator, "We must paralyze those tanks, otherwise we can't hold on. I'm responsible for 1. Wangshan, Linzu, Gaofeng, Chenbing. You each take charge of 1 and move." Liu pointed to some soldiers from his own camp and mercenaries from Iron Horse and assigned them their respective tasks. Then the action began. Outside the street, gunshots, explosions, and screams continued to sound, and the battle was very fierce. The firepower of the Huangquan side was extremely fierce, especially their tanks. Without tanks, the coyote camp was no match for them. They were beaten back step by step. If these mobile fortresses were not cleared, the coyote camp would not be able to support Yang Hao to attract the behemoth. Immediately, Liu carried a pack of explosives and moved quickly through the flames and smoke. With the advantage of being familiar with the terrain of the camp, Liu sneaked into the building near the tank without attracting the attention of the enemy soldiers. He pressed the in-ear communicator. "Cover me." Suddenly, from the nearby hiding places, the soldiers of the camp stretched out their guns and shot at the Huanquan soldiers on the street outside. Attracting the attention of these soldiers, Li Yu took the opportunity to jump out of the window, jumped onto the tank, and killed a soldier on the tank. Then he opened the cab of the tank and threw the pack of explosives in. When there was a cry of surprise inside, Li Yu had already landed on the ground and then detonated the explosives. Boom. The tank shook violently, and then flames burst out in the cab. After the flames, there were bursts of thick smoke. The tank stopped. Many other people also succeeded. In a blink of an eye, 6 tanks of Huanquan had been scrapped. Received this information. Luozi snorted, picked up his communicator, and said slowly, "It's your turn. Kill all the tricky ideas in the camp." Several figures with different characteristics jumped out of the off-road vehicles that entered the camp. There were men and women, about 5 or 6 people in total. They were all Luozi's confidants and the elite of the black rope class. One of the men was tall and strong, standing nearly 2 meters tall. He had well-developed muscles, like a giant. He was wearing extremely heavy armor and carrying a thick black shield that was almost as tall as him. He roared. He rushed towards a barricade in the coyote camp in front. The giant burst into a huge roar from his chest. The roar echoed in the street. He used some kind of martial arts to make the shadow of an elephant appear around him. The giant just ran straight into the barricade. The camp soldiers in the barricade hurriedly focused their firepower on the giant, but the giant raised his shield high, and under the fierce firepower, he crashed into the barricade like an ancient mammoth. Seeing that the situation was not good, the soldiers in the barricade rushed to the barricade. The next second, the barricade was smashed to pieces by the giant. Standing in the shattered barricade, the giant looked up to the sky and roared, as if in protest. A ball of fire lit up on the rooftop of a building in the distance. A dim light spurted out in the dusk sky. The giant who was protesting suddenly changed his face. The heavy shield was raised. Almost at the same time. Bang! A large piece of sparks exploded on the heavy shield, and the shield sank, and a sniper bullet was embedded in it. The giant looked suddenly in the direction of the gunshot, then roared and rushed over. At the sniper point, Iron Horse mercenary Zhang Chenyin frowned. The sniper of the Iron Soldier mercenary corps did not hesitate, picked up the sniper rifle, and moved immediately. He knew very well that he was no match for the giant. If the giant found him, he would be dead. At this time, in the camp, the elites of the black rope class scattered, looking for opponents, or those troublesome barricades and firing points. Under the suppression of these black rope elites, after knocking down the tanks, the little advantage that the coyote camp had finally gained became nothing. At this time, Li Yu was moving quickly in the streets and alleys. His heart was beating wildly, making him feel like it would jump out of his throat at any time. He was very tired, but he didn't dare to stop to rest. Because behind him, a woman was chasing him. The woman was wrapped in many streamers. The shoulders, arms, and thighs were all tied with streamers, and some of these streamers had already spread out. Long and short, the long ones were 50 centimeters, and the short ones were 30 centimeters. They floated around the woman as she ran. These streamers were extremely sharp. Li Yu saw with his own eyes that when this woman rushed past a team of camp militiamen, those streamers easily cut the human body into pieces. Under the control of the woman, these light things were as flexible as part of her body. Li Yu knew he was no match for her, so he could only shoot at her while keeping his distance. But those streamers could be used for defense as well as killing people. Whenever Li Yu shot, the streamers would dance quickly, intercepting and deflecting the bullets. At this moment, just as Li Yu was about to rush out of an alley, the outer wall of the building in front suddenly exploded, and blue-gray streamers poked out of the wall, breaking through the wall. Then the woman flashed out from the gap in the wall. Her blue-gray lips opened, spitting out a tongue with a tongue stud, licking her lips lightly and smiling. "I got you." Li Yu immediately raised his gun and fired. The streamers on the woman danced wildly. Ding ding dang dang. Sparks kept exploding on the blue-gray light curtain formed by the streamers. Click. In an instant, Li Yu ran out of bullets. He threw the gun at the woman, turned around and ran away. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 547 Insect Tide. The blue-gray ribbon flashed, and it cut the rifle thrown by Liu into two pieces. The woman dodged and chased Liu. The ribbons on her body danced, some stabbed Liu, and some stuck in the wall, pulling the woman up the wall. This allowed the woman to chase Liu from a high position. Liu drew out a sword and tried to block several ribbons. At this time, the woman fell from the sky and pounced on Liu. A trace of determination flashed in Liu's eyes, and he flipped his hand. There was an extra grenade. He bit the pull ring with his mouth and pulled it. Seeing this, the woman screamed immediately. She stepped on Liu's shoulder and rolled away with the force. When she landed, when she looked back, Liu had already passed through the wall and entered a building on the side. The woman was stunned for a moment, and then she realized that it was a dud grenade. Liu tricked her once. The woman roared and flew to the window. At this time, a grenade flew out of the dark window. The woman's face changed again. The ribbon wrapped around the grenade and threw it inside. Boom. This time it was not a dumb mine. In the flames of the explosion, she saw Liu crashing out of the gate and into the street. The woman ran away, and the streamers rolled up nearby stones, steel pipes and other objects. Then she threw them at Liu. Liu dodged several times, but was still hit on the shoulder by a stone. He suddenly turned around, staggered, and fell to the ground. The woman laughed and approached step by step. At this moment, a creepy roar came from far away outside the camp. The terrifying cry made everyone's scalp numb, and awakened the primitive fear instinct of mankind. This is the roar of a giant beast. The woman was stunned. She clearly remembered that the intelligence showed that there would be no giant beasts nearby. Otherwise, there would be no survivor camp. At this moment, the sound of a locomotive sounded. A locomotive came aggressively, with the front wheels lifted up, and hit the woman head on. The woman quickly dodged to the side and saw the locomotive passing by her, then turned a corner and swept towards Liu. The rider on the motorcycle reached out his hand and shouted, "Go, the parasites are coming." The rider on the motorcycle was Yang Heo. Hearing his words, the woman looked back and felt a chill on her back. A dense swarm of parasites surged over like a tide. These parasites looked like ticks, with wolf-like heads, pointed palates, and protruding noses. They are wolf ticks. There are too many parasites, and the woman dared not resist head-on. The streamer swept up and stuck in the wall, pulling her up. However, a group of wolf ticks separated, climbed up the wall, and chased the woman. The woman was startled and rushed into a window. Looking back, the ticks rushed into the window frantically. They were like a great turbid wave. The wolf ticks were tumbling, and the waves were surging. Seeing this, the woman's face was pale. She rushed to another window and wanted to break through the window. But at this moment, a wolf tick emerged from the window, and then these parasites as big as puppies drilled in one after another. The woman had no choice but to stop and turn around to run to the stairs on one side. The two groups of wolf ticks met in the middle and continued to chase. The woman did not dare to go downstairs, so she could only run upstairs and reach the rooftop in a blink of an eye. Looking down from the rooftop, a large number of wolf ticks poured into the camp. The chariots and soldiers of Huangquan no longer cared about the people in the coyote camp. They turned their guns and cannons and bombarded the wolf ticks. At the same time, above the rooftop, the grey wave had already caught up with the rooftop. The woman retreated step by step, thinking hard about countermeasures. At this moment, a wolf tick climbed up from the fence of the rooftop behind her. Then it jumped up and pounced on the woman. The woman screamed, and the streamer passed through the wolf tick, killing the parasite. But more wolf ticks climbed up from the fence of the rooftop. So from the air, the woman looked like she was standing on an isolated island that was constantly submerged by the tide. She had no way out. She roared, the streamer danced, and killed the wolf ticks. But the grey turbid waves gradually approached, and finally, completely submerged the rooftop. Outside the camp, in the wheeled armored command vehicle, Luo couldn't sit still anymore, and stood up and shouted, "Where did the giant beasts and parasites come from?" No one could answer this question. On the screens, it can be seen that the army of Huanquan is already in deep trouble. There are wolf ticks everywhere, including a tank that is firing. In the blink of an eye, it is crawling with parasites. When those things get into the tank explodes with flames. Obviously, the personnel inside and the wolf ticks died together. Mr. Luo, we may have to leave. The command looked at the giant beast radar. This is a lower level giant beast. We don't have mechs. If we don't leave now. He looked at Luo. Luo certainly knew the consequences. But when it seemed that the coyote camp was about to be taken down, the giant beasts and parasites suddenly appeared. It's not difficult to imagine. The coyote camp must be finished. I spent so much effort, but in the end, not only did I lose my original capital here, but I couldn't even get the camp. This time I really lost a lot. Luo snorted and had to give the order, retreat. Notify the people in the camp and ask them to find a way to break out. After saying that, Luo sat back, holding his head in his hands, in great pain. In the camp, Liu sat behind Yang Heo. Yang Heo roared, "What should we do now? I helped you lead the giant beast here. But these things don't recognize people. They will kill us and the people from Huanquan together." Liu calmly pressed the in-ear communicator. "Xiaodao, you can move." At this time, deep in the camp, several heavy trucks drove out. They left the camp along another passage. As soon as they left the camp, corpses were constantly thrown out of the truck compartments. As soon as those corpses fell to the ground, they suddenly exploded. It turned out that they all had detonators tied to their waists. When the people in the car detonated, the detonators exploded, blowing the corpses into a bloody mess, and blood splattered everywhere. Several trucks kept dropping corpses, and the corpses kept exploding. Soon the air was filled with a strong smell of blood. The wolf ticks in the camp were attracted by the strong smell of blood, and a large number of parasites began to move and chase the bloody smell. They ran out of the camp like a grey wave, submerging corpses one by one and chasing the trucks in the distance. On the rooftop of the main building of the camp, Yang Heo saw that most of the parasites had left the camp and went far away and couldn't help but whistled, "You are gone, Liu." "Those corpses, are they the vanguard team of Huanquan before?" Liu nodded. "Those corpses should have been dealt with, otherwise there would be a plague. Now, it's just right to digest them in the mouths of parasites. This is called making the best use of things." At this time, the sky was already dark. Suddenly, a roar sounded from a distance. On the horizon, Liu and the others saw a black shadow higher than the horizon moving. It was coming towards the camp. Behemoth. Yang Heo looked at Liu. "Is this what I said again?" Liu's face was pale, but he still smiled. "I'll go get you the Behemoth inducer." Chapter 548 Looking for Trouble. Boom. The engine of the motorcycle roared. The sound spread far in the wilderness at night. A motorcycle was speeding on the wilderness road, bumping from time to time because of the undulating road surface. The headlights cast a bright beam of light, cutting through the darkness. In the wilderness, anyone with a little experience knows that this approach is neither rational nor dangerous. But now, the rider on the car obviously can't care so much. The rider on the car is Luo. After receiving the report that the coyote camp was attacked, he left the team and drove to the camp alone. Now, he can see the coyote camp in the distance. From a distance, he saw that there were lights on in the camp, but Luo did not breathe a sigh of relief. He parked the car in a hidden place. Then he took out the communicator and called Liu. After a while, Liu's voice rang out on the communicator. "Mr. Chigi?" Hearing Liu's voice, Luo was really relieved. Half an hour later, Luo entered the camp. After just experiencing a big battle, at least half of the camp buildings were destroyed. Fortunately, the war did not affect the main building and mecha warehouse deep in the camp. When he came, Luo had prepared himself for the camp to be destroyed. Unexpectedly, Liu was able to protect the camp. At least, the core area of the camp was not destroyed, which was a blessing in disguise. He couldn't help but look at Liu with new eyes. He decided to reward him well. Arriving at the main building of the camp, Luo saw Liu. His left shoulder was wrapped in circles of bandages, and he also had many injuries. He looked quite energetic, except that his face was a little pale. You did a good job. Liu Yang nodded and said, you saved the camp. I will reward you for this credit. Liu did not take credit and said, it is not my credit to save the camp alone. For example, Yang Heo, if he hadn't attracted the giant beast, Mr. Chigi would not have seen us. Attracted the giant beast. Liu Yan was a little surprised. Then he listened to Liu's description of the battle today. Liu Yan realized that Liu had used such a crazy strategy. At the same time, it was also learned that the one who launched the attack this time was Liu Yu, a backbone of the Zan class of Huangquan. It's a pity that he ran away. Liu Yan felt a little regretful. Otherwise, killing Liu Yu would be a credit to Black Witch. Liu smiled and said, he ran away, but I asked Zhang Cheniyang to track him down. Zhang Cheniyang is a Ryan horse mercenary and a sniper. He is also good at hiding and tracking. Hearing Liu's words, Liu Yan nodded. You did a good job. It can be said that there are no leaks. Take good care of your injuries. I will have someone send a batch of cultivation potions over later, so that you can break through the primary realm as soon as possible. Liu was refreshed when he heard it. Thank you, Mr. Chigi. Liu Yan said seriously, this is what you deserve. You defended the camp for me and did not cause damage to the Mecha and Mr. Chen. These are all credits, even if it is not your credit alone. Therefore, I will allocate some resources to you next. Do a good job. Liu nodded repeatedly. Liu Yang continued, where is Yang Heo? If he's not dead, ask him to come find me and tell him there's work to do. Liu smiled. He just came back. He worked very hard today and is resting. I'll go call him. By the way, Yang Tao is also in the building. I've asked someone to notify her that you're here. After a while, Yang Tao came. When the little girl saw Liu Yan, her face couldn't hold back. Her eyes were wet and slightly red. It was the first time for Yang Tao to experience such a war. Although she didn't directly participate in it, she was scared to death. Seeing Liu Yan now was like seeing her only relative. She almost cried. Liu Yan chuckled in his mask, reached out his hand, and rubbed Yang Tao's little head. You did a good job, and didn't embarrass me. The teacher is very pleased. Yang Tao wiped her eyes vigorously, raised her little mouth, and smiled. Liu Yan took back his hand and said, get ready and leave with me later. Okay. Yang Tao nodded vigorously. Then Yang Heo came. His hair was messy, his eyes were bloodshot, and his beard was untidy. He looked a little tired. Today he traveled hundreds of kilometers, luring the giant beasts in and out. Although he was not seriously injured, he consumed a lot of energy. After a nap, he recovered 60% to 70% and was in good condition overall. When he saw Liu Yan, Yang Heo said, Mr. Chigi, I heard there is work to do. Liu Yan nodded. Let's go find trouble with Huangquan. Yang Heo was refreshed when he heard it. Okay, now, of course. Late at night, in a deserted village, a wheeled armored vehicle, 2 off-road vehicles, a total of 3 cars, parked in front of a supermarket that had not collapsed. In the supermarket, several soldiers were looting things on the shelves, but they didn't find anything valuable. As for the food, it had expired and could not be eaten. A piece of open space was cleared at the entrance of the supermarket. A sofa was placed. Liu Yu sat on the sofa with a gloomy face. The commander glanced at him and didn't dare to speak. He knew that Liu Yu was in a bad mood. Indeed, no matter who it is, it would be hard. Today, Liu Yu has lost all his belongings. First, he lost a vanguard team. Then, because of the relationship between the giant beast and the parasite, he also lost the main force. Several elites at the level of Black Robe. Only the giant in front of him, Qin Zhu, killed the swarm of insects and came back. However, Qin Zhu was also injured a lot, but he didn't seem to care much and just bandaged it. Now he is not resting, but eating. His huge body seems to be a bottomless pit. At this time, all kinds of empty cans, lunch boxes and empty plates are placed in front of the giant. Not only did he eat up the rations he brought with him, but he also put all the food he found in the supermarket, yes, those expired cans and so on, into his mouth. He didn't worry about what would happen if he ate these expired foods. Even so, he had no intention of stopping and was asking the few remaining soldiers to bring all the edible things in the supermarket. The commander envied Qin Zhu's ability to eat and his temper of not caring about anything. He knew he couldn't do that. So he looked at Luo and said, Mr. Luo, this failure is not due to war. Yanran will not blame you. Luo looked at him and shook his head. Shichun, you and I have been friends for a long time. Don't you understand? I'm not worried about Mr. Ang's blame. I'm worried that other people will see that my strength has been greatly reduced and will plot against us. We are not peaceful inside. Commander Shichun smiled bitterly. Of course he knew this, but because he knew it, he didn't dare to say it out loud. He was afraid that it would make Luo distressed. Now that Luo said it himself, he couldn't avoid the question, even if he wanted to. Ishikawa sighed. This time it was indeed a miscalculation. I didn't expect a survivor camp to be so difficult. Even, they were so crazy that they didn't know where to lure a giant beast here. Otherwise, we would have succeeded long ago. Luo sneered. Do you still think that it is just an ordinary survivor camp? If it was just an ordinary survivor camp, would Jiuying disappear here? Can we be defeated here? I can bet with you that there is a certain force behind that camp. It is very likely to be the Black Witch. After all, that camp was one of the underground transit stations of the Black Witch at the beginning. The commander was shocked and said, Mr. Luo, do you mean that Mr. Jiuying was killed by the Black Witch people? It is very likely. Otherwise, how could Jiuying disappear for no reason? Luo said in a deep voice, let everyone strengthen their precautions tonight and be careful of the Black Witch attack. As soon as the voice fell, a strange whistle suddenly sounded outside the supermarket. Luo looked out the door and saw a black dot dragging a flame. It drew a clear track in the darkness and landed at the bottom of his wheeled armored vehicle. Boom. Amidst the huge noise, the violent explosion overturned the wheeled vehicle and even blew off the wheels and the belly of the vehicle. The violent airflow shattered all the doors and windows of the supermarket, and Luo, Ishikawa and others were knocked to the ground. Then the thick smoke spread in from outside the gate and windows. Luo climbed up and looked out, and saw that the lights on the street in the distance suddenly lit up. It seemed that a large number of enemies were attacking. The giant Qin Zhu climbed up, pressed a helmet on his head, and picked up the shield beside him. He said in a muffled voice, Mr. Luo, you go quickly. I'll hold it here. After speaking, he raised the shield and rushed out. As soon as he rushed out of the supermarket, sparks exploded above his head. With a bang, Qin Zhu's helmet flew out. At this time, in the darkness in the distance, the sound of a sniper rifle was heard. Ishikawa also climbed up, pulled Luo and said, Mr. Luo, a good man will not suffer a loss in front of him. Let's go. As long as the Green Mountains are there will be no shortage of firewood. After tonight, it won't be too late for us to come back and seek revenge on them. Luo was extremely angry, but he was still rational and knew that Ishikawa was right. He shouted to the soldiers, follow me. In the distance, Luo's eyes were full of circles of fire. Under the vision of Wu Wang's blazing eyes, he not only saw Luo and others clearly, but also saw their information clearly. Now, except for Luo, who was in the advanced realm, there was only Qin Zhu, who was in the intermediate realm. The commander Ishikawa was only in the primary realm. It seemed that he became the commander by virtue of his military literacy and other abilities, rather than personal strength. But in the current situation, personal strength is more important. Yang Heo, the big guy is for you. Taozi, go practice with that commander. I'll take care of the guy named Luo. As for Chen Yang, you can do it yourself. After quickly assigning the tasks, Luo made a gesture. Yang Heo let out a strange cry, turned the throttle of the motorcycle, and rushed straight towards the giant. Yang Tao retreated silently into the darkness, her small figure flickering flexibly, and in a moment, she disappeared. Luo was not idle either. He turned the throttle of the motorcycle and chased after Luo and others. Chapter 549 Night Battle. Driving the motorcycle, Yang Heo rushed through various houses at a very fast speed. Countless abandoned buildings and ruins quickly retreated beside him, turning into blurred shadows that went away. Soon, he saw Qin Zhu. The giant who was blocking in front of him with a shield also saw Yang Heo. The two looked at each other in silence. Yang Heo rushed over on the motorcycle. Qin Zhu lowered his center of gravity, swung his shield forward, and made a defensive attack posture. However, Yang Hao did not rush over from the front. He turned the front of the motorcycle and the motorcycle bypassed the front of the opponent. Yang Hao used his mechanical prosthesis to control the motorcycle powerfully and steadily, and raised his other hand. In that hand, there was a macro submachine gun. Pointing at Qin Zhu, Yang Hao pulled the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. The muzzle spewed flames, and the bullet swept through the air, and the friction heating made the surface of the bullet body turn slightly red. Thus, red traces swept through the air. They pointed to the side of Qin Zhu's body, and Qin Zhu immediately turned around and moved the shield. But Yang Hao was driving the motorcycle faster than Qin Zhu. Only a small part of the bullets were intercepted by the shield, making a clanging sound and splashing countless sparks. More of them fell on Qin Zhu, but the surface of Qin Zhu's body was faintly shining with the light of Yuanli, condensing into a vague outline of armor. Mystical art, armor. Qin Zhu had already secretly released the mysterious art of armor on himself, which blocked the bullets. Yang Hao did not stop shooting. He just drove the motorcycle, circling around Qin Zhu and kept shooting. Qin Zhu roared behind the shield. Coward, if you have time, you can fight your grandfather twice. What's the point of just running? Yang Hao ignored him at all. The motorcycle had already rubbed out circles of tire marks around Qin Zhu. Qin Zhu did not dare to launch an attack rashly. He did not forget that there was a sniper hiding in the dark. So, after Yang Hao ran out of bullets, he also consumed Qin Zhu's armor. Just as Qin Zhu's body flashed with light and the iron armor disappeared, Yang Hao controlled the motorcycle, turned a corner, and aimed the front of the motorcycle at Qin Zhu. He stepped on the throttle and rushed over. The motorcycle engine roared and rushed straight towards Qin Zhu. When it was almost close, Yang Hao pulled the front of the motorcycle and raised the front wheel. He jumped off the motorcycle, rolled on the ground twice, and then jumped up. The motorcycle roared and smashed towards Qin Zhu. The big man burst out with a burst of Yuanli, and the shadow of an elephant appeared around him. Qin Zhu raised his shield and hit the motorcycle, and the two sides collided with a loud noise. The motorcycle was hit by Qin Zhu, and flew to one side, and fell heavily to the ground. The fuel tank was broken, and gasoline gushed out. The motorcycle slid back all the way, rubbing violently against the ground, and a bunch of sparks were wiped out. Several sparks fell into the gasoline on the ground, and suddenly, with a bang, flames rose. Then the flames quickly spread to the motorcycle, and there was a flash of fire at the motorcycle, and then there was a violent explosion. The flames shot up into the sky, outlining a golden edge of light around Yang Hao. Taking advantage of the opportunity, when Qin Zhu knocked the motorcycle away and exposed his flaw, Yang Hao had already rushed over. He pulled out the long knife from his back. It passed by Qin Zhu's feet. The knife light burst out, like a silver rainbow hanging on the side of Qin Zhu's leg that was not protected by armor. A puff of blood and flesh flew out. Qin Zhu screamed and knelt on one knee. He looked up and glared at Yang Hao. At this time, there was a sound. His head shook sharply, his helmet deformed, and the shadow of the elephant around him blurred slightly. It was Zhang Chengyang who was hiding in the dark. Although this shot did not take Qin Zhu's life, but the impact of the sniper bullet, even with the weakening of the Yuanli layer, was still like a sledgehammer. It knocked Qin Zhu dizzy. More blood flowed from the helmet and spread across his face in an instant. Yang Hao bounced up and turned around, leaning forward with a grim smile on his face. He ran back. A knife slashed down, landing on the arm of Qin Zhu holding the shield. Blood spurted out. The knife almost cut through the bone, causing Qin Zhu to scream and lose his grip on the shield. Bang! The heavy black shield fell to the ground, splashing blood. After Yang Hao struck, he dragged the knife and walked away. He rushed more than 10 meters before stopping. Then he turned back again. Qin Zhu seemed to have no strength left, half knelt on the ground, with an injured arm hanging down. But just when Yang Hao rushed to him, Qin Zhu suddenly exploded. He turned around abruptly and reached out with his left hand to grab Yang Hao's neck. Yang Hao seemed unable to stop and rushed straight forward, allowing Qin Zhu to pinch his neck. Qin Zhu grinned. "I caught you." He was about to crush Yang Hao's neck. Yang Hao, whose face was red from being pinched, swung his long knife in the air. The blade passed Qin Zhu's chin, splitting Qin Zhu's lips and nose along the way, and finally lifted the giant's helmet. Qin Zhu's face changed immediately. Almost at the same time, his head shook violently. Then, like tofu that had been hit hard, the muscles and bones were first squeezed and piled up to the left. Then, with a bang, it exploded into a distant wave of blood. A bullet flew out of the wave of blood and flesh. At this time, a strong gunshot like thunder sounded in the darkness in the distance. It was the sound of a sniper rifle. Qin Zhu had half of his head cut off by a gunshot. His eyes widened, and his body tilted to the ground. He fell to the ground. Only then did Yang Hao break free from his big hand, followed by a violent cough. After coughing for a while, he got up with a grim smile and kicked Qin Zhu's body. "Idiot, I'll let you catch me on purpose." Yang Hao exhaled a foul breath. Then he picked up the long knife. He took 2 steps and sat down on the ground. He suddenly broke out in a large amount of sweat. The battle just now seemed short, but it was too intense. Yang Hao's physical energy had been consumed by 70% to 80%. He was unable to fight again. In the distance of the village, at a drainage ditch, Liu and his companions were running quickly towards a small bridge ahead. At this moment, the sound of a motorcycle engine and gunfire rang out simultaneously. Lines of fire lit up the night, pointing directly at Liu and his companions. They could only stop and look for cover. Liu looked out from behind a low and incomplete wall and saw a motorcycle speeding towards them. The rider on the motorcycle was wearing a cloak and a ferocious wooden mask of a Renuo opera on his face. He probably had used up all his bullets, threw away his gun, and suddenly jumped into the air from the motorcycle. In midair, a ball of yuanli light like a blood mist bloomed all over his body. Then the long sword was unsheathed, and the sword exuded an extremely strong bloody smell. It seemed to have killed countless lives. Then the long sword chopped down, and the blade emitted a blurred wave that seemed to be condensed from blood mist. Sword key. A blood mist sword key chopped down from the air, with a clear target, pointing directly at Liu. Liu's pupils shrank slightly, and he shouted angrily, activating his Yuan force, and fiercely slapped the sword energy above his head. A palm print immediately appeared in the blood mist sword energy, and the sword energy deformed and exploded with a bang. The energy was radiating in all directions, forcing Commander Ishikawa and several soldiers to cover their heads and dodge. Chapter 550 In the dark. Liu Yan was not surprised at all that the sword energy was broken by Liu. He had never thought that this casual sword attack could kill Liu. After all, the opponent was the backbone of the Zan class. He was not the elite of the Hisheng class, nor the cannon fodder of the Denghuo class. The most important purpose of this sword attack was to keep Liu. Liu Yan was satisfied with this. He fell to the ground. He didn't even look at it. The blood drink flew, and the long sword swept across. The sword produced a blood mist ripple, and rushed towards Ishikawa and others. Although Ishikawa was the commander, his combat power was sparse, and he didn't dare to confront the sword energy like Liu. He yelled and fell to the ground. His reaction was already good, but those soldiers were not so lucky. They didn't react in time, and the sword energy swept through their bodies. Although their bodies were not separated, they were blown away by the sword energy ripples. When they fell to the ground, everyone vomited blood and stopped breathing. At this time, after knocking down the soldier with a single blow of his sword, Liu Yan ignored him and locked his sights on Liu, his figure flashing away. Snow Drink turned into a blurry afterimage and slashed towards Liu's throat. The latter suddenly jumped up. His body rolled in the air and brushed past Blood Drink like a flash of surprise. When he landed, he pulled out 2 long metal tubes from his waist, connected them and twisted them, and then extended one section in front and one in the back. It turned into a spear. Liu held the spear and shouted loudly. The spearhead kept shaking, hanging waves of yuanli light, twisting the air and blooming with complex and dazzling spear lights. Thousands of spear lights whizzed away and covered Liu Yan. Luo Yang practiced the blood transformation sutra, and the blood drink in his hand suddenly blurred. In front of the spear light that Luo Yu shook out, blood light suddenly appeared in all directions. The blood light collided with the spear light, making a series of ding-dong sounds. Using chasing wind and shadow to shatter the spear points, Luo Yan's figure flashed and instantly appeared on Luo Z's left. Luo Z's eyes rolled. Luo Yan's figure flashed again. Using dragonfly skimming water twice in a row, Luo Yan flashed in Luo Z's blind spot. Blood drink flew into the air. A blood arrow jumped out of Luo Z's arm. He retreated repeatedly, shook his spear, and roared and rushed forward again. When Luo Z and Luo Yan were fighting, Ishikawa knew the opportunity to leave. He knew that his fighting power was low, and he couldn't help Luo Z if he stayed. He acted decisively. Ishikawa ran across the small bridge and suddenly his shoulder burst into pieces when he turned the corner. In the corner of his eye, a flash of fire flashed across his shoulder and disappeared into the darkness in front. He was shot. Ishikawa quickly made a half jump and got in through a window next to him. He rolled twice. Then he shrank into the darkness. Only then did he feel the burning pain in his shoulder. Recalling the scene just now, judging from the trajectory of the shot, the opponent's shot was aimed at his head, but he suddenly turned and it just grazed his shoulder. Ishikawa panted and looked at the window warily. He quickly formed a seal and put on an iron armor for himself. Then he took out a pistol and pointed it at the window. For a cultivator like him who is at the primary level, it is more practical to use a pistol than to use combat skills and mystical arts. Just when Ishikawa was concentrating on the window, a pink lotus quietly floated in the darkness behind him. It was printed on Ishikawa. Ishikawa suddenly felt something was wrong and quickly moved and turned around. He immediately caught a glimpse of the suspicious lotus from the corner of his eye. The lotus touched the concrete column that Ishikawa had just leaned on, and the lotus suddenly shattered, causing a sudden crack in the concrete column. Then the seemingly delicate leaves suddenly exploded in all directions, turning into wisps of pink light. Ishikawa quickly protected his face with his hands. Several pink light streams brushed past him and collided with the iron armor to produce a bright glow. But fortunately, Ishikawa's armor was not broken. "Who? Come out!" Ishikawa shouted, firing continuously into the darkness. The flames sank into the darkness, but they were like a drop in the ocean, not splashing a single drop of water. After the magazine was emptied, several pink lotuses flew lightly from the darkness from different directions. They blocked Ishikawa's retreat, and Ishikawa suddenly smashed the gun in his hand at one of the lotuses. The pistol bounced off, and the lotus suddenly shattered, and the petals burst out. The flying pink streams touched other lotuses and detonated them all. In this way, Ishikawa avoided being surrounded, but the pink light streams splashing in all directions also temporarily blocked his movements. He could only hold his head and curl up to minimize the chance of being hit by the petals. Even so, the pink jets around were too dense. Ishikawa was still hit by a lot of light streams, and circles of only light appeared on his armor. After resisting for a moment, it was finally shattered, but the pink jets also disappeared. Ishikawa didn't dare to stay any longer and ran to the window. Before he jumped out of the window, another white lotus shot out from the darkness. These lotuses were connected into one piece, shaped like a big dragon. Ishikawa looked back, and his pupils shrank slightly. Later, a large piece of white lotus petals gushed out of the window like a river. In that white flower river, Ishikawa's body was uncontrollably carried out by the flowers and leaves and flew out. It hit the opposite wall heavily, and the flower river kept washing away. After a while, it gradually disappeared. Only then did Ishikawa slide down from the wall, leaving a blood stain on the wall. He sat on the ground, gasping for breath, and couldn't even move a finger. At this time, he saw a flash of fire in the darkness of the window. This was the last scene Ishikawa saw in his life. A bullet hole appeared on the commander's forehead, and blood slowly flowed out from it. In his two wide open eyes, a petite figure jumped out of the window. Yang Tao. After the little girl confirmed that Ishikawa was dead, she swayed and sat down. The shoulder of her black combat uniform was stained with blood. When Ishikawa fired at the house just now, she was injured by a stray bullet, but she didn't scream. It was not until now that she groaned. Yang Tao pulled down her mask, and her little face was covered with sweat. She tore off the clothes on her shoulder and checked the wound. Fortunately, it was just a scratch, but the skin on her shoulder was torn. The wound was bloody. Yang Tao took out a pack of wound medicine from her waist bag and sprinkled it on the wound. She took out a hemostatic patch and stuck it on her shoulder, then stood up and walked towards the village. In the village, next to the small bridge, big guns and long swords. Countless sparks were knocked out. The wrist trembled, and the blood drink became blurred again, almost invisible. Luo Yan used the chasing wind and shadow for the second time, and 7 or 8 bloody lights hung next to Luoz's spear. Luoz now held the middle and rear part of his spear with both hands. His spear was made of soft alloy. Now as he swung, the front end of the spear shone with a stream of light. It collided with Luo Yan's sword light. Clang clang clang. The sound of collision was continuous and spread far away. Luoz was secretly frightened while fighting. Every time the opponent's longsword hit him, he felt that he was about to lose his grip on the spear. And it seemed that it was because of the opponent's skills. Until now, Luoz was restless and irritable, and his chest was churning with blood. He always felt like coughing up blood. Chapter 551 A Candy. After fighting for a while, Luo Yan roughly figured out that, although the Luo had reached the advanced second level, his skills were very mediocre. He was not as good as Jiuying, who died in his hands before. He also did not have Aoyang, who has strange and mysterious skills. Among the backbones of Huangquan, he was probably the bottom one. Thinking of this, Luo Yan suddenly used the secret method opening spirit wheel. This secret method greatly improved his flexibility, physical toughness and reaction ability. Suddenly, Luo Yan's fighting method changed. He no longer fought with Luo with a knife, and his body was like a swimming fish. Suddenly, he passed under Luo's gun and flashed within 3 steps in front of the opponent. The long sword of blood drink had a strong fishy smell, and the tip of the sword went straight in and slashed towards Luo's throat. Luo hurriedly dragged up the big gun, pulled it up suddenly, and blocked Jiuying. He had rushed against Jiuying head on before, but this time he did not bump into the gun body. Under Luo Yan's control, the long sword lightly circled the gun body half a circle, and then slid forward. It passed through Luoz's left hand holding the gun, leaving a puff of blood. Luoz screamed and retreated, handed the gun to his right hand, and held the gun with one hand, still shaking the gun tip. The gun tip made a hissing sound, and several inches of gun light shot out, distributed in the air, preventing Luo Yan from chasing. Luo Yan rushed forward, as if he didn't see the gun light. Luoz shouted loudly. Although he held the gun with one hand, the gun still shot out like a dragon, and the gun tip bloomed gun flowers in the air. Unexpectedly, Luo Yan's figure suddenly blurred, and he nimbly bypassed the most intense part of the gun force, and flashed to Luoz's injured left arm. The blood drink kept jumping, and the long sword seemed to be erratic and weak, but in fact it was at a tricky angle, and went straight to Luoz's weakness. Luo Yan's sword strikes were faster than the last, making Luoz sweat profusely. Suddenly, Blood Drinker made a feint, luring Luoz to defend himself. Luo Yan's sword suddenly changed its momentum, and it twisted his right hand like a snake. Luoz screamed, and blood spurted out from the fingers holding the spear. He could no longer hold the spear. The spear fell to the ground. Luo Yan then kicked Luoz in the heart, causing a burning sensation in his heart, and causing him to groan and open his mouth. At this moment, Luoz saw the masked guy opposite him, flipped his hand, and then slapped it in his mouth. He immediately felt something cold, smooth, and slightly sweet sliding into his esophagus. Luoz was startled, and at this time Luo Yan slapped him on the neck again. The muscles on his neck squirmed, causing him to swallow. Luoz retreated again and again, then reached out to scratch his throat, causing him to retch. But he didn't spit out anything. He then looked up, and looked at Luo Yan. "What did you let me eat?" Blood Drink pointed to the ground, and Luo Yan said slowly, "Don't be nervous, it's just a candy." Candy? Luoz naturally wouldn't believe it. Luo Yan gave him candy for no reason. His pupils often dilated, and he shouted, "That's poison, right?" Luo Yan didn't answer his question directly, but he said, "Anyway, you won't die for a while, so really, don't be too nervous. Let's make a deal. I don't want to be harassed by your Huanquan all the time, so when you go back, why don't you report to the higher ups and say that the coyote camp has fallen into your pocket? If you are willing to cooperate, come to me at this time next month. I'll treat you to candy. Luoz's forehead was covered with cold sweat, and he was sure what Luo Yan gave him must be poison. But it's not a poison that takes effect immediately. Come to him again next month. He will give you an antidote. Or a potion that temporarily relieves the toxicity. Luo Yan said in a deep voice. You want me to betray the organization? No way. Luo Yan didn't believe that this man was so loyal. You are not necessarily a big shot in Huanquan. Is it necessary to lose your life for an organization? Besides, if your entire army is wiped out and you can't even get a camp, how do you think others will look at you? You can say that this camp is controlled by Black Witch. I can even give you some information about Black Witch for free to increase your credibility and persuasiveness. In this way, you will still be valued in the organization, and I will avoid being harassed by you. Luo Yan opened his eyes wide. Are you from Black Witch? Luo Yan did not answer. Instead, he gave him some unimportant information. Then he turned and left. Remember, come to me in a month. Watching Luo Yan disappear into the darkness, Luo Yan still couldn't believe it. He didn't die. But so what? He was fed poison and was controlled by the masked man from then on. Thinking of this, Luo Yan sighed. Being controlled is better than dying now. As long as a person is not dead, there will always be a chance. He picked up the big gun, disassembled it, and left sadly. Outside the village, Luo Yan met up with Yang Heo and others. Mr. Chigi, is it done? Yang Heo asked. Luo Yan nodded. I'll let Luozi go. In the next period of time, he should not be harassed by Huanquan again. Yang Heo looked confused, not knowing what letting Luozi go had to do with not being harassed by the camp. Luo Yan briefly explained what happened. Yang Heo realized that Luo Yan used poison to control Luozi to prevent him from being targeted by Huanquan. Otherwise, the mecha teaching point in the camp would not be able to operate. Walking beside Luo Yan, Yang Tao looked admiring. Teacher, you have planned it a long time ago. Luo Yan said, no, I just had this idea at the last minute. He suddenly had this idea because he saw that Luozi's strength was average. If he was very strong and sacrificed all his men, it would inevitably arouse suspicion. Moreover, because Luozi's strength was at the bottom and he needed to solve the problem of survival, the chance of cooperating with Luo Yan was higher. For various reasons, Luo Yan changed from chasing Luozi to controlling him. Yang Tao was puzzled and said, if it was a sudden impulse, how could the teacher have medicine with him? Do you always carry it with you? Hearing Xiao Tao's words, Yang Heo felt a chill in his heart. Unexpectedly, Luo Yan said, what I gave him was not medicine. It was just a candy. As he said that, Luo Yan took out a bag of candy and stuffed it into Yang Tao's mouth. This was originally a gift for you. Yang Tao opened her mouth wide, happy that Luo Yan brought her a gift, and surprised that her teacher actually fed her a candy. Yang Heo was also stunned for a moment, then said, what if he goes back to check his body and finds no poisoning? Wouldn't that mean he has discovered your plan, Mr. Chigi? Luo Yan glanced at him and said, if you were forced to eat something unknown on the battlefield, and the other party generously gave you information and let you go, after you went back, although you checked your body and found nothing abnormal, are you relieved? Yang Heo thought about it and smiled. I'm indeed not relieved. On the contrary, I will be more certain that I have been poisoned. Luozi would think so too. Luo Yan smiled in his mask. Of course, he was not very sure. However, if Luozi discovered his plan, at most they would still have to deal with Huanquan. But if it succeeds, the coyote camp will be able to live in peace for a while. When the mecha division is trained and can fight in actual combat, they will not be afraid of Huanquan. What's more, Uqi Yushu had originally planned a war against Huanquan. Maybe it won't be long before the problem of Huanquan can be solved. Let's go back to the camp. Chapter 552, Rewards and Punishments. The next day, when he woke up in the morning, Luo Yan saw that the camp had already started to rebuild. This time, the camp was attacked by the yellow spring, and then the parasite swarm also came to join in the fun. The camp suffered serious losses. Whether it was the consumption of materials, the destroyed buildings and fortifications, or the casualties of the camp personnel, they were all visible losses. Fortunately, the core area of the camp was not breached. The mecha warehouse was preserved, and there were as many maintenance personnel as mechs. It was a blessing in disguise. After breakfast, Luo Yan summoned the important members of the camp who had participated in the battle. Li Yu, Liuc, Yang Heo, Yang Tao, Wang Shan, Zhang Chenang and others came to the hall. Luo Yan looked around at these faces and nodded. This time, the camp was attacked by the yellow spring, and it was all your credit. In this, Li Yu made the greatest contribution, followed by Yang Heo. The others are ranked in no particular order. Since you have made contributions, there will naturally be rewards. I have always been clear about rewards and punishments. Luo Yan glanced at Yang Heo and said, Li Yu. When his name was called, Li Yu stepped forward quickly. Luo Yan took out a knife and handed it to him. The knife was called Bone Picker and was obtained from the Black Tiger Killer. Luo Yan had never used it much, and now he gave it to Li Yu as a reward. Later, I will have someone send a batch of cultivation resources over. You decide. When you reach the 5th level of the elementary level, I will choose a set of intermediate exercises for you. Let you continue to practice. Li Yu took the bone picker, his eyes bright, and nodded, saying, thank you, Mr. Chigi. For a surface survivor like him, being able to practice is already precious. Now he not only got a heavy weapon, he also got the promise of an intermediate exercise. Li Yu felt that the future was bright and a huge motivation surged in his heart. At the same time, he was more determined to follow the figure in front of him. Luo Yan looked at Yang Heo again. The latter did not dare to get crazy in front of Luo Yan, grinned, and walked up. Luo Yan said in the mask, your skills and fighting methods are both fierce. Come to me later, I will teach you the secret method KO and Wheel, which can burst out you only and temporarily improve combat power. It is very suitable for you. Yang Heo's eyes lit up, and he nodded repeatedly. Then he said, Mr. Chigi, in addition to teaching me the secret method, can you give me some pointers? Luo Yan did not answer directly. Let's see. Next, he rewarded Liuc, Wang Shan, Zhang Chenang and others with a share of cultivation resources. Help them grow as soon as possible. When it was Yang Tao, the little girl jumped in front of Luo Yan excitedly. Luo Yan said, I have heard from Yang Heo that you have performed very well since coming to the surface. You even killed the commander of Huanquan last night. Not bad. Your reward is a combat skill. After teaching Yang Heo the secret method, I will teach you a quicksword move chasing the wind and chasing the shadow. Yang Tao cheered. Thank you, teacher. Luo Yan nodded, looked at Li Yu and said, I will have someone send a batch of supplies later. You can distribute them yourself and reward those who have made contributions. Li Yu said loudly, I will, Mr. Chigi. Luo Yan asked Yang Heo to stay, and the others dispersed. When only Luo Yan and Yang Heo were left in the hall, Luo Yan looked at the man and said, how much do you know about the acupoints in the human body? Yang Heo looked confused. What are acupoints? Luo Yan was not surprised. Folk cultivators do not have systematic learning and training. There are no common sense classes like in the academy, so they don't understand many things. The more he came into contact with folk cultivators, the more Luo Yan realized that the knowledge taught by the underground city academy was a rich treasure. That knowledge allowed them to lay a solid foundation, so that, even after leaving the academy, they could continue to learn and grow. Unlike folk practitioners like Yang Heo, who have no systematic knowledge theory, they learn things by taking a bite here and there. They swallow them whole, not to mention being able to apply knowledge to other cases. Even whether they can digest what they have learned is a problem. Take the present for example, since they have not learned the knowledge about the acupoints. Therefore, even if Yang Heo gets the secret method of the KO and Wheel, it is still unknown how long it will take for him to explore and learn it by himself. And in this process, he may take a detour because of learning the wrong things. Knowledge is really important. Luo Yan nodded and said, I will give you a copy of the human acupoint map later. You must memorize it. You must be so familiar with it that when I tell you which acupoint it is, you can let the yuanli flow to the corresponding acupoint. Then I will teach you the secret method of the Koan wheel. Yang Heo immediately made a bitter face. Mr. Chigi, do I still have to memorize things? I'm not very smart. When I was in school, I was at the bottom of the class. Luo Yan asked back, then will you learn it? Yes. Yang Heo gritted his teeth. It's just memorizing things. I will memorize it. Luo Yan then left. Later, Yang Heo received a copy of the human acupoint map on his mobile phone. In order to learn the secret method, he could only grit his teeth and study it. Mecha warehouse. Luo Yan walked into the warehouse and saw the maintenance team borrowed by Dark Blood assembling mechs. Zhao Ziyang, who was in charge of the assembly work, saw a masked cloaked man coming in and shouted, "Hey, not just anyone can come in here. Get out quickly, or I'll notify Mr. Liu." Liu just came in and smiled. "Captain Zhao, this is Mr. Chigi." Zhao Ziyang had never seen Luo Yan, but he had heard the name Chigi and was immediately startled. It turned out to be Mr. Chigi. "I just talked nonsense, sir. You won't blame me, right?" Luo Yan shook his head slightly and saw the maintenance team installing a device on the legs of the mecha. He asked, "What is that?" "Chablon rivets." Zhao Ziyang said, "It's an old-fashioned equipment invented by the Research and Development Institute of the Wings of Freedom Mecha Group. The stability of old-fashioned mechas was not stable before. Once they were continuously fired, they would always move. So the Research and Development Institute of Wings of Freedom invented this equipment. It can be installed on the legs of the mecha. When it is continuously fired in place or hit by a giant beast, it can automatically pop out to enhance the mecha's grip. It is equipped with a servo deformation system. Its sensor is very sensitive and the deformation speed is very fast. Although it is no longer used now, for old-fashioned mechas like us, this equipment can still play a lot of roles at certain times." Luo Yan nodded and then saw a dark red rocket launcher with a dragon head lying not far away. Seeing Luo Yan looking at it, Zhao Ziyang introduced, "This is a shoulder-fired rocket launcher for mechas. Xiangsha. PS. I forgot to say last time that some mecha equipment designs were provided by LSP, just like the equipment in this chapter, which was designed by him." Applause. Chapter 553. The first batch of students. Xia. Rocket launcher for mecha. Uses high explosive and high combustion shells. This shell has added special incendiary agents and is extremely powerful. It has special effects on fire-fearing, fire-weak, and caterpillar-like giants. It can also be used to destroy the survival circle of giants. But this shell needs a safe storage environment. Otherwise, it is easy to cause disasters. Now the major city core basically no longer use this shell. Although Dark Blood got a batch, this thing is one less. Now there are 10 such shells stored in the warehouse of the Koyot camp. Finally, Luo Yan saw a mecha sword placed in a fixed frame. Zhao Ziyang said proudly, "This is the best sword we can get. Yanjen. It is a heavy-duty thermal cutting sword." Luo Yan looked at it and saw that Yanjen was dark red in color and there were patterns similar to flame lines on the blade. The length of this sword is amazing, and the handle occupies 2/3 of the length of the sword. It is made of one-piece casting. It looks like a long-handled weapon like a halberd or a spear, rather than a sword. Those are superconducting heating arrays. Zhao Ziyang said, "In order to use it, the hands of the mecha must be adjusted accordingly, with heat-resistant coatings and special cooling systems. Because when the sword's heating function is fully utilized, the overall temperature of the blade surface will exceed 4500 degrees Celsius. It has a good effect on mechas without heat protection resistance against lower level behemoths." Luo Yan nodded. Although the mechas and equipment provided by Dark Blood are all old models that have been eliminated. However, these things are combined. If the driver has a certain strength, not to mention lower level behemoths, mid-level behemoths are also possible. Outside the forbidden area, mid-level behemoths are still relatively rare. The most threatening to the surface camp is still the lower level behemoths in the parasite swarm. With these two mechas and equipment, and equipped with drivers, the safety of the Koyot camp should not be a problem. Liu said at this time, "Mr. Chigi, the mecha simulation cabin has been installed. Originally, Mr. Chen was going to debug it yesterday, but he ran into Huangquan. He is debugging it now. Do you want to go over and take a look? Liu Yang nodded and followed Liu to the other side of the camp. Here, the coyote camp has just built a row of houses to be used as a teaching point for mechs. Walking into a house, Liu Yan saw an instrument similar to a space capsule placed in the house. Many cables and optical fibers extended around, connecting generators and various servers. The space capsule is the mecha simulation cabin, and now the hatch is closed. The blue signal light indicates that the simulation cabin is in operation. After a moment, the signal light turned green. The hatch opened, and Chenefei, who had cleaned himself up, came out. Chenefei cut his hair short and shaved his beard. Although his cheeks were still a little thin, his face was ruddy. His eyes were also bright, and his complexion was much better than when Liu Yan first saw him. Seeing Liu Yan, as soon as he got out of the cabin, Chenefei smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Chigi." "Morning." Liu Yan greeted him briefly, and then asked, "Is the simulation cabin usable?" Chenefei nodded. "No problem. Although the model is a bit old, there is a delay in signal transmission, and there are not as many combat models and scenes as the new model. Basically, there are no big problems, and it is enough to train beginners. After learning to drive, the most important thing is actual combat. Now 2 mechs are being assembled in the warehouse. As long as Mr. Chigi is not afraid of spending money, the effect of using mechs in actual combat is 100 times stronger than that in the simulation cabin." Liu Yan smiled in the mask and said, "So, can we start teaching in the next few days?" "Sure." Chenefei said, "I have compiled the lesson plan, and will start teaching now. If everything goes well, the first batch of students will be able to drive the mechs and try actual combat in 3 months. By the way, have you decided on the list of the first batch of students?" Liu Yan nodded. "It has been decided. I will let Liu give it to you later." Wen Zhao had already helped Liu Yan select the first batch of students, because the teaching point was at the coyote base. So in addition to the main players of Team 7, Liu Yan also added camp backbones such as Liu and Liuc to this first batch of students. In addition, the names of Yang Hao and Wang Shan were added. The former dared to fight and kill, and stayed on the surface for a long time. If he learned to drive a mecha, he would be able to assist Liu and ensure the safety of the camp. The latter was born in the Iron Horse mercenaries, most of whom were retired personnel of the Corps. Wang Shan had seen and touched mechs, and his understanding of mechs far exceeded that of others. After this batch of students graduated, Liu Yan also considered letting Yang Tao learn to drive mechs. However, that was a matter for the future. Next, Liu Yan went to the simulated cockpit to experience it himself. After leaving a desperately high score in the cockpit system, he invited Chenefei to have lunch together. In the afternoon, Liu Yan asked Liu to prepare a quiet room. Later, Yang Tao came. Liu Yan gave her a short blade. This was seized from an elite member of the Huangquan yesterday. Although it's not a heavy weapon, it's still quite good. Yang Tao took the short blade and pulled it out. She saw that the blade was matte with fish scales on it. There were 2 characters for flying fish on the handle. She wielded it a few times and found it suitable. Then Liu Yan said, "In the afternoon, I will teach you a combat skill called chasing the wind and chasing the shadow. If you use a knife, it's a fast knife. If you use a sword, it's a fast sword. The essence of this style lies in the word fast. If you use it with the secret method of opening the ghost wheel, it will kill people without them being seen. It's very suitable for you." Yang Tao nodded repeatedly. Afterwards, Liu Yan personally demonstrated it for her and patiently explained the key points and difficulties of using this combat skill. If Yang Tao didn't understand something, Liu Yan would explain it to her carefully until Yang Tao fully understood it. Then, Yang Tao practiced it herself. Liu Yan walked to a corner of the room and looked at the 2 long swords, Blood Drink and Ring Dragon, placed on the ground. A moment later, Yang Tao, who was practicing his own fighting skills, saw Liu Yan unsheathing Blood Drink and Ring Dragon. He held a sword in each hand and then slowly gestured in the air. At first, Liu Yan wielded the 2 swords, and his movements were still very difficult and unfamiliar. But after a moment, he gradually got into the groove, and the 2 swords danced into 2 groups of blade light. The room was filled with sharp knife whistles that made people's scalps numb. Yang Tao's mouth opened into an O shape, with admiration on his face. But at this moment, there was a clang. In Luo Yan's hand, Ring Dragon and Blood Drink collided with each other. One of the swords bounced up, flew out, and fell to the ground. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 554. Hard to find an opponent. Teacher, are you practicing new fighting skills? During the break, Yang Tao ran over and squatted aside to watch Luo Yan wielding the two swords curiously. Ding. After the long sword slipped out of his hand again, Luo Yan put away the two swords. I have always used one sword. Now I have two. I wonder if I can use them at the same time. For example, use two fighting skills at the same time. But now it seems that it is difficult to use two swords. I have to practice for a while and see. Luo Yan used the strong memory feature of Shenzhen to review the entire process of the practice just now. If the left and right hands use the same action separately, it is still simple. But it is very difficult to combine the actions of both sides and integrate the sword techniques of the two systems into one. Based on the principle of making the best use of everything, Luo Yan did not want to waste the two swords on hand. So he wanted to try to use the two swords at the same time. If he practiced it, he could also use two swords. Especially the two long swords he has now. The splitting star is light, and the dragon elephant is heavy. One is light and the other is heavy. If he can use them skillfully, I believe his enemies will have a lot of headaches. But now, Luo Yan has a lot of trouble using the two swords of similar weight, the Ring Dragon and the Blood Drink. He is still a long way from being proficient. He is not in a hurry. So during the few days he stayed in the camp, he would always spend half a day practicing the double swords. The rest of the time, he concentrated on practicing the Blood Transformation Sutra. Finally, after a week, the first level of the Blood Transformation Sutra was finally completed. That day, Yang Hao also basically learned the Koan wheel. Thinking of what Yang Hao wanted to ask him for advice before, Luo Yan asked him to come to him in the afternoon. I don't know how this news got out. As a result, when Yang Hao came to Luo Yan in the afternoon, he found that Yang Tao, Li Yu, Wang Shan and others were there. They were sneaky and poking their heads around. Yang Hao was unhappy. All of you, get out of here. Don't mention Mr. Chigi, I've already found you. Why are you hiding? Yang Tao stuck out her tongue, smiled foolishly and walked out of her hiding place. What a coincidence. Mr. Yang, are you here to see the teacher? Yang Hao pointed a knife at her. Don't play dumb. And what about Li Yu? How long do you plan to hide? Then Li Yu, Wang Shan, and other figures came out from the window, from behind the pillars, and from behind various shelters. TSK, you guys, are you here to see me laugh? Yang Hao shouted. Li Yu laughed dryly and said, what are you talking about? We are here to observe and learn, right Xiao Tao? Yang Tao's little head nodded non-stop. Yes, 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 that's it. Yes, bullshit, you little washboard. Don't always hang out with Li Yu. Be careful not to be led astray by him. Yang Hao said. A certain little washboard suddenly puffed up his cheeks. Looking angry, Liuc put his hand on her head. Don't be afraid, you are still young, you will grow up. At this time, Luo Yan is here. He walked in and saw quite a few people. He was a little surprised. Don't you have work? Luo Yan asked, but still said, if you want to watch, then watch. Whoever is interested can come down and fight with me later. Great. Yang Tao was the first to shout. Li Yu and others were also eager to try. After all, there were not many opportunities like this where Luo Yan could teach them. Mr. Chigi, those good-for-nothings don't need to waste your time. If they want to fight, I'll beat them so hard that their parents won't recognize them. Yang Hao said arrogantly. Suddenly, there was a booing at the scene. Yang Tao even said, who are you talking about, the good-for-nothings? I'm talking about you, Xiao Taozi. You're just a washboard that eats, but doesn't grow any meat. Yang Hao laughed. At this time, Luo Yang coughed dryly. Let's start. or are you going to perform crosstalk here? Yang Heo hurriedly said, I've been waiting for you to say that, Mr. Chiggy. Luo Yan said HMM, and then two scabbards fell at his feet. Blood drink. Ring dragon. Unsheathed at the same time. Yang Heo was stunned. It was the first time he saw Luo Yan using two swords. Luo Yan held the two swords in his hands in a natural manner. You go all out. Of course. Yang Heo shouted, and his Yuan power burst out. He used the secret method K-Yuan wheel, and his momentum suddenly rose. Luo Yan also used his Yuan power, but did not use the secret method, and suppressed his Yuan power to the level of the intermediate realm. Otherwise, what was the point of defeating Yang Heo with the advanced realm? Let's start. Luo Yan reminded him, and then Blood Drink pointed up, and Ring Dragon stretched out. Suddenly, the two swords were swung almost in order. Blood Drink from top to bottom, Ring Dragon from left to right. Each swung a sword, sweeping out two sword ki, one horizontal and one vertical. The horizontal sword ki was slightly faster, and swept towards Yang Heo's waist. Yang Heo quickly flipped in the air, and passed over the sword ki that swept across. Just after landing, another vertical sword ki came across the ground. He was in a hurry and barely managed to split it open. It was just the beginning, but Yang Heo was already at a disadvantage. When Luo Yan came close, he could only defend himself, and had no chance to fight back. Luo Yan swung the two long swords, Huan Long and Jiuying, in his hands, and attacked Yang Heo one after another. Clang 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 clang. On the open ground, there were constant sounds of iron forging. Although Yang Heo was using a secret method, he could only barely ensure that the long sword in his hand would not be knocked away. Now he didn't dare to think about counter-attacking at all. Just defending himself had used up all his energy. Luo Yan's two swords danced out arcs of swords, and the arcs of light were as red as blood, and the edges were clear and dazzling. The sword light flashed, the wind whistled, and the sword power was fierce, like a snowstorm. The people around were fascinated. I felt that Mr. Chiggy's double swords were like the brushes of a skilled painter, and the strokes were filled with indescribable profound artistic conception. The bright edge and bright red sword light would collide with Yang Heo's sword every time it swept across it. The sword light kept flashing, and the sparks kept spraying. It was like the fireworks on a summer night. Brilliant and gorgeous. I don't know how long it took, but suddenly there was a snap. The pretty good sword in Yang Heo's hand was broken by Luo Yan. The blade passed by Yang Heo's face, leaving a bloody mark. At this time, Yang Heo saw the flash of the sword in his field of vision, and he felt a chill on his neck. He looked again, and found that it was Luo Yan's two long swords, crossed on his neck. Yang Heo didn't dare to breathe. Facing the two red eyes in Luo Yan's mask, Yang Heo seemed to see a ball of fire and a piece of magma. Clang. The two swords bounced up and were attracted. Luo Yan turned and left. I'll return you a sword later. After leaving the room, Luo Yan reviewed what had just happened, and shook his head. Yang Heo is still too weak. I didn't even dare to use the skills, let alone the secret skills I got from Yukiishu. In a contest like this, you can't test anything. We have to find another opponent. Now Luo Yan began to miss the big sports meeting. It was a great place. There were a lot of opponents at a glance. Chapter 555, No Harvest. The underground city of Guangling. Nanxing Communications Company. This is a branch of Kaiming Heavy Industry, managed by Luo Xianai's eldest son Luo Nanxing. Although it is called a communications company, the company's main business is not communications. It is just a shell company. Its real role is to serve as a transit station between Kaiming Heavy Industry and other businesses of the Luo family that cannot be seen in the light. The money earned from other businesses is transferred to Kaiming Heavy Industry through Nanxing Communications and becomes the legitimate assets of the Luo family. At the same time, the source of funds for Wanzitang, which has been recently promoted by the Luo family, is also transferred through Nanxing Communications. After several procedures, it has become the capital chain of Wanzitang. Recently, in order to combat the Red Gate and try to control the huge underground world of the old city, the Luo family has vigorously supported Wanzitang. Funds have been sent to Wanzitang almost continuously. On Luo Nanxing's busiest day, he approved hundreds of fund flow applications. However, in the past 2 days, Luo Nangsing has been a little overwhelmed. At this time, in the office of Nangsing Communications Manager, all the big and small supervisors of the finance department were here. Now, like children who had done something wrong, they all lowered their heads and dared not look at Luo Nangsing. Luo Nangsing threw a financial report on the table. How could this happen? This month, our finances can almost be described as a total failure. That's fine, but why are our funds so tight now? Can anyone explain this to me? Suddenly, the head of the finance department began to practice take-eye. Gradually, the ball was kicked to the head of a small supervisor. Seeing that the ball could no longer be kicked out, he had to bite the bullet and said, Mr. Luo, normally we wouldn't be in a financial crisis. But recently, according to your instructions, we have almost no upper limit on the financial assistance we provide to Wan Zitang. And a few days ago you told us that Wan Zitang's funding application no longer needs your approval and can be directly transferred from the company account. So, Luo Nangsing frowned. So what? So we gave them the green light, and in the past 2 days, the flow of funds transferred to Wan Zitang has exceeded 50 million. The young supervisor said, looking at the financial manager. The financial manager coughed repeatedly, as if he was sick, and picked up the water cup to drink, but the water in the cup was already drunk by him. 50 million? Luo Nangsing jumped up. They asked for so much money? Yes. The junior supervisor handed over a report. This is the specific transaction list. Please take a look, Mr. Luo. Luo Nangsing took it, his face getting darker the more he looked at it. What the hell is Wan Zitang doing? Why did they report so much money recently? He put down the report. Then how much funds can we mobilize now? The financial manager coughed dryly and said, only 150,000. Luo Nangsing was stunned. Only 150,000? Is there no funds coming back from Wan Zitang? The financial manager shook his head like a rattle. Why did you tell me now? Luo Nangsing said angrily, I did say that Wan Zitang's application no longer needs my approval, but they didn't recover the funds. You should have told me. The financial manager shrank his head and said, Mr. Luo, you said in the meeting before that Wan Zitang's fund recovery period is long, so we don't need to worry about it. So, we think this should be normal, so we didn't tell you. Good for nothings. Luo Nangsing slapped the report on the financial manager's face. I invited you here to let you take care of the company's assets. It is true that Wan Zitang's fund recovery period is long, but our company's funds are only this little left. You should have noticed it in advance and informed me in time, instead of waiting until I ask you now. Go, call Gao Mingxiao from Wan Zitang to me. Also, ask Mr. Chen to come to my office. Good for nothings. A bunch of good for nothings. The office door opened, and the financial directors came out one by one. After leaving the office, these people complained in a low voice. He was the one who said the cycle of cash flow is long. He was the one who asked us to give Wan Zitang the green light. Now that something has gone wrong, you call us good for nothings. Okay, stop complaining. He's the boss after all. What's wrong with the boss? I have to be scolded. I quit if I can't stop doing this. In the office, Luo Nangsing stood by the window with his hands on his hips. Now that Nangsing company has made such a big mess, he feels like he can't get it over with. Although he just scolded the entire finance department, Luo Nangsing knew that he had indeed been a little careless recently. If his father Luo Xianai asked, he couldn't push the blame to the finance department. He would have to take the blame himself. He didn't know what his father would think of this matter. Luo Nangsing shook his head. Wan Zitang, you better give me a reasonable explanation. At this time, the office door was pushed open, and a 60-year-old man walked in. Mr. Luo, are you looking for me? Luo Nangsing turned around quickly, and saw an old man wearing glasses. This was Chen Nian, the nominal product manager. Chen Nian has been in the Luo family for 30 years, and is considered an old man around Luo Xianai. After Nangsing Communications was established, Luo Xianai placed Chen Nian in this company. It was to assist Luo Nangsing. Luo Nangsing quickly and politely invited Chen Nian in, explained the situation, and then said, Mr. Chen, in your opinion, what should we do now? Chen Nian thought for a while and said, it involves hundreds of millions of funds. If Wan Zitang cannot recover the funds in the short term, then we can only report it to the head office. No. Luo Nangsing said without thinking. Mr. Chen, if my father knows about this, he will think that I'm not worthy of being reused. Mr. Chen, you also know that if I leave this impression on my father, I will not be able to do anything in the future. Chen Nan looked at the eldest son of the Luo family. What do you mean? Luo Nangsing said, I have made an appointment with Gao Mengxiao of Wan Zitang. I promise to solve this matter within 3 days. As for my father, I would like to ask Mr. Chen to do me a favor and not tell my father about this first. Chen Nan is a Luo Xianai's eyes and ears in the company. How can such a big thing be hidden from him? If Luo Nangsing hadn't invited him over, he would have reported this matter to Luo Xianai this afternoon. Hearing Luo Nangsing's request, Chen Nan couldn't help but frown. Luo Nangsing came to him and held Chen Nan's hand. Mr. Chen, you watched me grow up. You should know what kind of person I am. Don't you believe me? Hearing this, Chen Nan sighed. Okay, Mr. Luo, I'll listen to you. But only 3 days. If it can't be resolved within 3 days, I have to notify Mr. Luo. Otherwise the funds of the head office will also be affected. Chapter 556 Setting the Game. Chen Nan left. A moment later, Gao Mengxiao came. The boss of Wan Zitang, a man who was almost 60 years old, had thin cheeks and dark circles under his eyes. It looked like he had not slept well these days. In Guangling City, Wan Zitang can only be regarded as a second-rate pharmaceutical company. Usually, it does processing for those big factories and sells some medicines by itself. The scale is very small. But just this year, with the support of Kaiming heavy industry, Gao Mengxiao has transformed himself and become a leading figure in the Guangling pharmaceutical circle. The past few months can be said to be the highlight of Wan Zitang and Gao Mengxiao. Those who he had to look up to in the past now try their best to visit him every day. Even the servants and helpers in his family have risen with the booming business of Wan Zitang. When walking outside, he speaks a lot more firmly than before. It can be said that when one person succeeds, the whole family will rise. But in the past week, Gao Mengxiao encountered trouble. Big trouble. At this time, he met Luo Nangsing. Gao Mengxiao hurriedly said respectfully, Mr. Luo, good morning. Luo Nangsing said with a gloomy face, I'm not good, Mr. Gao. Gao Mengxiao immediately hit a snag, not knowing what to say, and could only smile. Luo Nangsing threw the report sent by the finance department in front of him. Explain to me what big business you have done recently in Wan Zitang. 50 million was taken from our branch in 2 days. Adding the previous money, I have at least 200 million in your small Wan Zitang. Gao Mengxiao couldn't help but sweat on his forehead. He smiled and said, Mr. Luo, didn't Master Luo give instructions before? We will buy as much as the red gate in the old city throws out. They have been shipping like crazy in recent days. I'm worried that they are going to impact the market and drive down the prices of medicinal materials. Plus, with Master Luo's instructions, Mengxiao boldly bought up all the goods thrown out by Redgate. See, there are more places to spend money. Luo Nangsing closed his eyes slightly. They sold so much goods, which are tens of millions or even nearly 100 million worth of goods. Gao Mengxiao nodded continuously. Yes, I have prepared a detailed purchase list. Mr. Luo, you can take a look. Wan Zitang definitely did not spend the Luo family's money indiscriminately. He hurriedly handed the list he had prepared early in the morning to Luo Nangsing. Luo Nangsing took a look and said in surprise, really, is Redgate crazy? They actually threw out so many medicinal herbs. I'm afraid they were not bought from outside. Gao Mengxiao chuckled. They are not crazy, but desperate. They probably didn't expect that my Wan Zitang could consume so much of their food. So they thought that we would perish together, but we still eat it. Now let alone Guangling, even the medicinal herbs in the surrounding cities of Qingyang and Changping. At least 30% are in the hands of our Wan Zitang. In the future, the price of these medicinal herbs will be decided by us. No, by the Luo family. Hearing this, Luo Nangsing's mood improved a little. He knocked on the table and said, let's not talk about the capital expenditure. Tell me, what has your Wan Zitang not recovered recently? If you only purchase goods, but don't ship them out, your capital chain will be blocked. More beads of sweat appeared on Gao Mengshao's forehead, and he wiped his face with a handkerchief. I will solve this matter as soon as possible. Not as soon as possible. Luo Nangsing knocked on the table, but it must be within 3 days. No, within 2 days. At least give me back 40 or 50 million, otherwise I can't explain to my father. 40 or 50 million? Gao Mengshao hesitated. What is this? Luo Nangsing slapped the table. Are you hiding something from me? Gao Mengshao trembled and said, Mr. Luo, you can't blame me for this. I don't want to, but I don't know what's going on recently. The distributors who used to buy goods from Marwa and Sitang suddenly don't want them anymore. What? Luo Nangsing realized the seriousness of the problem. Why is this happening? I don't know either. Gao Mengshao wiped his sweat and said, in the past few days, I have run my legs off just to find out why they don't buy from us. But these people are either not in the underground city, or they refuse to see me, or they make excuses to me. I don't know what's going on with them. If it weren't for this, I would have recovered a batch of funds and transferred it to the company long ago. Luo Nangsing clenched his fists. Oh no, you've been fooled by Redgate. Gao Mengshao was stunned. Mr. Luo, what do you mean? Redgate deliberately shipped goods to lure us to buy, and then persuaded our lower level distributors to not want our goods, trying to cut off our capital chain. Luo Nangsing said in a deep voice, besides this possibility, can you think of any other reasons? Those people are not stupid, they would just leave the business alone. Now they suddenly don't want your goods. It must be Redgate doing something secretly. It's their plan. Gao Mengshao asked in confusion. Does Redgate have such great ability? The facts are in front of us. Luo Nangsing smoked a cigarette. You have taken in too much goods, but you can't sell them. Now all the funds are crushed by those medicinal materials. Medicinal materials are time sensitive. If they are stored for too long, the medicinal properties will be lost, and they will become worthless. At that time, no matter how cheap you sell them, no one will buy them. Damn it. Damn it. Gao Mengshao finally got anxious. Mr. Luo, what should we do now? Luo Nangsing said in a deep voice, in this case, we can only sell it to other cities. But if we sell it to other cities, the period of capital recovery will be longer. Luo Nangsing only asked Chennai for 3 days. Even if one Zitan contacted other cities now, these 3 days would not be enough. Luo Nangsing closed his eyes and said loudly, as if he had made a decision. Gao Mengshao, you contact other cities immediately and sell it at a price 20% lower than the market price. No, 30% lower. But there is one condition. The buyers in other cities must first pay 15% of the total price of the medicinal materials as a deposit. In the next few days, you can sell as much as you can and collect as much deposit as you can. After receiving it, transfer it to our Nangsing communication account immediately. Gao Mengshao nodded repeatedly and went down to do the work. Luo Nangsing called the financial manager over again. He closed the door and said in a deep voice, every word I say next is not allowed to be leaked. Otherwise, you know what will happen. The financial manager nodded repeatedly. Luo Nangsing said in a deep voice, withdraw a sum of money from our anonymous account immediately. The funds in the anonymous account are all the money earned by the Luo family's shady businesses. They are regularly aggregated in some anonymous accounts every month, and then through some procedures, the money is laundered and becomes the funds of Kaiming Heavy Industries. How much do you want to withdraw? The financial manager asked carefully. 50 million. No, 100 million. Luo Nangsing said, the head office has a project to invest in next, and it needs money. 100 million. The financial manager said embarrassedly, such a large amount will take at least a week to complete the procedures. If you want to make it look good, it may even take half a month. Luo Nangsing said in a deep voice, I can't wait that long. It must be credited to my account within 3 days. As for the procedures, skip them if you can. Chapter 557 Happy Travel. 3 days later, Luo Yan returned to the underground city. After changing clothes, he appeared in the academy. Before he went to report to Wei Fenghua, Luo Yan was called to the student union. In the meeting room of the student union, Liu Ruohan, Xiaoping, Yang Lixi and others have already arrived. While waiting for the others to arrive, Bei, who was sitting next to him, wrinkled his nose and said, "Student Luo, where have you been recently? Leaving me alone. I'm so busy. Someone skipped class, and someone fought in public. The work of the discipline committee alone is enough to keep me busy for a whole day. If you weren't here, I would be busy enforcing discipline all day, and would have no time to study and practice." Seeing her angry look, Luo Yan unconsciously raised the corners of his mouth. "Leave it to me next. You can take a week off." Bei blinked. "I didn't say I wanted to take a vacation. It's just that I can't handle it alone if you weren't here. But now that you're back, we can work together." Luo Yan nodded. Then I heard Liu Ruohan said, "Are you guys free this weekend? If you are free, come to my house and play. It's my birthday this weekend, so I'm having a small party." Bei nodded when he heard there was a party, and then looked at Luo Yan. "Student Luo, do you have time? It's just one night. It won't delay anything." Luo Yan nodded. "No problem." Bei smiled immediately. At this time, people arrived one after another. Liu Ruohan stood up. "Today's call for everyone is not actually for the student union." She left the president's seat and looked at the door on the side. "Captain, we are all here. You can come out." The door opened, and Dizeng, who was already the city lord, walked out. Seeing Dizeng, everyone was stunned. Luo Yan was also surprised. It was not that he was surprised that Dizeng came to school, but he was surprised why he appeared in the student union. Dizeng sat in the president's seat and smiled. "There is something I need your help with." He glanced at Luo Yan, and then said, "You all know Xing heavy industry, right? We suspected a long time ago that the Luo family's wealth was not clean, but we have never caught them. But recently, there was a problem with their capital chain. In order to solve this problem, they took the risk of transferring a batch of funds. In the past, their dirty money would be laundered through some procedures before being transferred to the account of Xing heavy industry. But this time, they were eager to use the money, so they skipped some procedures. This exposed their ponytail. Now we have the relevant evidence and are ready to arrest people related to the Luo family. But there is one thing. The Luo family has too many connections in the underground city, both openly and secretly. Whether the arrest work falls on the core or the security department, the news may leak out. Therefore, I came back to school this time. I hope you can help." Li Boheng said in surprise. "Captain, are you saying that you want us to be responsible for the arrest?" Dizeng nodded. "Yes, I will authorize you. After you start the action, I will let the core follow up, so as to catch Luo Xianai off guard. The time for action is tonight." The meeting ended. Walking with Dizeng in the school's tree-lined avenue, Luo Yan said in a low voice, "Luo Xianai has Gale Lin by his side. I'm afraid it won't be that easy to catch Luo Xianai." Dizeng smiled and said, "Don't worry about this matter. I have asked Minister Fang for help." Luo Yan heard this and nodded slightly. If Fang Yao took action, Gale Lin really couldn't make any trouble. Dizeng said softly, "It's all thanks to you this time. I don't think Luo Xianai would have dreamed that this time the scheme was set up by the cooperation between Redgate and us. If it wasn't Redgate that dumped the goods, but my people did it, one sitting might not be fooled, and would not carelessly eat all the medicinal materials you threw out." Luo Yan smiled. "They would not have thought that those purchasing merchants received your suggestion and did not take the goods from one sitting, thus melting their capital chain." Dizeng nodded. "And recently, I deliberately asked Liu Yang of the construction bureau to relax the review and handed over a large project to Xing heavy industry. In this way, they are eager to use the money and can only take the risk of using those shady funds. And because time is urgent, there is no time to whitewash, so we found evidence. By the way, I have also received a batch of anonymous reporting materials recently, reporting the illegal businesses that the Luo family has been doing in secret, and attached relevant evidence. This should be Liang Hua, the backbone of Huanquan who you deliberately let go to retaliate against Luo Xianai. With these materials and the evidence we have, Luo Xianai can't run away this time, and he can't clear his suspicion." In the afternoon, the student union members were gathered in the training hall. Weni Fenghua came in with a few teachers. City Lord D has already told you. We will arrest Luo Xianai and his son tonight. Luo Yan and other students nodded. Weni Fenghua smiled and said, he is worried about leaking the news, so he came to our college this time and asked us to help him. At present, we know that there is a Gaolin next to Luo Xianai. This person is the former head of the corps. But we don't need to worry about Gaolin. Naturally, someone will deal with him. It's just that Luo Xianai has been working hard before the natural disaster. So Gaolin may just be a cover, and there may be other masters around him. Therefore, I and a few teachers will also participate in the Luo mansion tonight to take people away. Luo Yan, Bei, you will act with me. The same goes for the others. Divide into arrays. Be sure to catch Luo Xianai and his son as soon as possible. Over the years, he has relied on his status and position to secretly gain many benefits from the underground city. Now we have finally caught his flaw. If we can't catch him tonight, all our efforts will be wasted. Don't practice today, conserve your energy, and prepare for tonight's action. Soon. It was evening. Luo Yan, wearing casual clothes, walked out of the dormitory with Long Xiang. Seeing Bei wearing a black sportswear and white shoes, Luo Yan noticed a bracelet. He didn't know what the beads were made of. Each bead was crystal clear. When light shone on it, circles of light flowed in the beads. It was like a deep passage made of light. Seeing Luo Yan staring at his bracelet, Bei shook it and said, this is the magic weapon Xiaoyou that I exchanged. It will automatically activate when I encounter fatal danger, or I can use it on my own. It can allow me to get away from danger in an instant and go to a place I think is safe. There are 18 beads here. Each time I use it, one bead will be consumed. In other words, it can only be used 18 times. Chapter 558 The capture begins. Although there is a limit on the number of times, Xiaoyou can be used a total of 18 times. It can be used autonomously or passively. It is a relatively practical magic weapon. With it, Bei's ability to save his life has greatly increased. At this time, a few coughs sounded in the shadows of the tree-lined avenue ahead. Then Weni Fenghua came out and said lightly, let's go. It was night. The dome holographic panel of the underground city simulated the picture of the dim starry sky. Jiuying Road was originally a wealthy area. There were fewer houses here, so passers-by were almost invisible. Luo Yan and Bei followed Weni Fenghua to Jiuying Road and observed Luo Mansion from a distance. It was now 11 o'clock in the evening. The lights in Luo Mansion were on, but the lights were dim. Weni Fenghua pressed the in-ear communication device and said, the other teams are in place. The father and son of the Luo family have also confirmed that they are currently in the mansion. We must catch them tonight. Luo Yan and Bei nodded. Weni Fenghua said softly, action. According to the plan, Bei immediately summoned the strange black nothing. This weird thing, like a black cloak, floated up like a jellyfish and then gently landed on Bei's body. When Wu disappeared, Bei also disappeared into the air. A moment later, the door of Luo Mansion quietly opened by itself. As soon as the door opened, Weni Fenghua flashed away. The director of the teaching department usually looked sick, but at this time, his movements were faster than thunder and lightning. And without disguising, he started to use his Yuanli skills and crashed into the door with a huge momentum. He did this obviously to attract possible opponents in the darkness and protect students such as Luo Yan. This is also the reason why Weni Fenghua and other teachers participated in this action tonight. Sure enough, as soon as Weni Fenghua crashed into the door, a momentum rose in Luo Mansion. An old and familiar voice sounded. What is the purpose of the teacher of Basin Academy breaking into Luo Mansion at night? Gaolin, the former head of Guanglin Corps, the former leader who had become Luo Xianai's lackey, walked out of the main building slowly, smoking his homemade cigarettes for healing and keeping alive. He had the demeanor of master as he puffed out smoke. Weni Fenghua smiled and said, the father and son of the Luo family have been engaged in many illegal businesses for many years, including but not limited to smuggling giant parasites. In addition, the Luo family has secretly established multiple underground organizations, and the evidence is conclusive. Now, according to the order of the city lord, they are arrested. Irrelevant people should leave immediately, otherwise they will be treated as accomplices. Gaolin laughed. If you want to arrest the Luo family, the Free Security Department or the local security bureau will take action. Since when did Basin Academy start arresting criminals? At this time, a voice rang out. If Mr. Gao wants to move his body, Fang can accompany you. Gaolin's pupils shrank slightly. His sight passed Wei Fenghe and Luo Yan, and fell on a person who walked in at the gate. Information Department, Fang Yao. The former dragon rider held the knife in both hands, and walked into the gate of Luo Mansion, as if taking a stroll. The alarmed security guards in Luo Mansion came nearby, but no one dared to stop Fang Yao. Fang Yao did not look at the security guards from beginning to end, but just smiled slightly. He looked at Gaolin. Then he said, Teacher Wendy, leave Mr. Gao to me. You guys go do your job. Okay. Wei Fenghe did not hesitate, coughed twice, and walked towards Gaolin with Luo Yan. When he was about to pass by the old man, Gaolin's long coat and pants suddenly bulged, and then he grabbed Wei Fenghe with a palm. But at this moment, Gaolin's eyes reflected a sharp knife arc. Fang Yao, who was 20 steps away, suddenly approached. He was not polite. The long knife in his hand drew a large arc and slashed at Gaolin's wrinkled old face. Gaolin could no longer grab it with his palm, so he quickly retracted it and slapped Fang Yao's knife. Immediately, a wave of air was set off. The two of them crossed each other quickly. Fang Yao stood at the gate, while Gaolin stood outside the gate with an embarrassed look on his face. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the old man had lost a move and could not defend the gate. He could only rely on shifting and maneuvering to avoid Fang Yao's knife. In this delay, Luo Yan had already followed Wei Fenghe into the hall. Then, figures kept coming in from the windows of the hall. They were other teachers with Liu Ruohan and other student union members. They quickly exchanged glances and quickly dispersed, rushing to the living room upstairs to capture the father and son of the Luo family. At the gate, Gaolin's beard and hair stood up, his momentum rose steadily, and he slapped Fang Yao through the air. The air was distorted, vaguely outlining the shape of a huge palm. Seeing that this big palm was about to hit Fang Yao smiled, and the sharp blade broke through the air, easily cutting the invisible palm. Then, he did not stick to guarding the gate, and took the initiative to rush to Gaolin. I don't know what secret method or footwork he used. The figure flickered and disappeared in a flash, making it impossible for the old man to see clearly. Every time Fang Yao flashed past Gaolin, a clear blade light would appear in the space around the former leader. Fang Yao dodged around Gaolin for a while, and Gaolin was already covered with wounds. Gaolin shouted, exploded his yuanli, and pushed his palms to both sides. With him as the center, translucent palms spread out in all directions like blooming flowers. At this moment, Gaolin was like a thousand-armed Ahad, attacking without blind spots. This finally forced Fang Yao's figure out. Gaolin was about to take the opportunity to chase him, but he saw Fang Yao retreating, his blade flashing, and arcs of light remaining in the air. The blade energy that filled the space was so sharp that Gaolin did not dare to chase him rashly. Fang Yao retreated to the gate, calm and composed, and it was impossible to tell that he had just been exercising violently. Gaolin sighed in his heart. This former dragon rider is really not easy to mess with. Even if he is injured, he still can't take advantage of him. At this time, a girl's voice sounded in the main building. Teacher, there is an underground passage in this house. The father and son of the Luo family were escorted to the underground passage. This was Bei's voice. Hearing this, Gaolin felt relieved. He naturally knew that there was an underground passage in the Luo mansion. There were many passages under this house, and the passages were intertwined, thus forming a complex maze. There are not only mechanisms in the maze, but also guarded by special people. Once the Luo mansion is attacked, it can get rid of the pursuers through this underground maze like tonight. Luo Xianai has been operating for many years, and his foundation is only greater than Gao Yuanhang. In addition to such arrangements, he also has a group of dead men. It is not so easy to catch him. Gaolin saw Fang Yao guarding the gate and not entering the house, so he was not in a hurry to attack. He took out a cigarette box, got himself a cigarette, lit it and took a puff and said, Brother Fang, how about we chat here? Chapter 559, Luo Mansion Death Soldier. In the underground passage of Luo Mansion, Luo Xianai, who was dressed in casual clothes, took a few breaths. Although he usually paid attention to exercise, he was not young after all. From hearing that Zeng wanted to arrest him to running into this underground passage, he consumed a lot of physical strength. In addition, he prepared an electric sightseeing vehicle in this underground passage for transportation. Now, Luo Naxing helped him sit in the sightseeing vehicle and then shouted, "Go quickly. Take channel 4. The electric sightseeing vehicle started, and the driver drove to channel 4 according to Luo Naxing's instructions. Luo Xianai took a breath and said, "What's going on? Why did the underground city suddenly arrest us? Evidence? What evidence do they have?" Because of this operation, Zeng did not alert the security department and did not even use the core. As a result, Luo Xianai did not receive any news beforehand. If he had not prepared in advance, he would definitely be caught off guard now. Luo Naxing heard this. His face was a little strange. Luo Xianai glanced at him and immediately knew that this son was hiding something from him. He immediately grabbed Luo Naxing and asked, "Did you do something?" Luo Naxing panicked and said quickly, "Dad, it's none of my business. It's because Gao Mingxiao of Wanzatang couldn't get his funds back that I took the risk." Luo Xianai's eyes widened. "What did you do? What did you do?" Luo Naxing said with a sad face, "I withdrew 100 million from our batch of unnamed accounts to the company's account." Luo Xianai's face turned pale. "When did it happen?" Luo Naxing stammered, "Just 3 days ago." "What? 3 days?" Luo Xianai roared. "Are you crazy? 3 days is not enough time to follow the procedure. What happened to Wanzatang that you have to take the risk to withdraw so much money?" Luo Naxing had to tell him everything. "Stupid. You are stupid." Luo Xianai's eyes went dark, and he almost fainted. He took out a bottle of refreshing medicinal oil and rubbed it on his nose, then said, "Such a big thing happened. Why didn't you notify me immediately? Can't you see that this is a trap? So, the Red Gate is connected to the underground city? Otherwise, there is no way they would join forces to set this trap for us." Luo Naxing wanted to cry, but had no tears. "Dad, what should we do now?" Luo Xianai said angrily, "What else can we do? The underground city has now obtained evidence. The business we did is enough for us father and son to spend the rest of our lives in prison. The only thing we can do now is to leave Guangling." The more he thought about it, the angrier he became, and he punched his son a few times. "You little beast. I thought you would be more stable than your brother, and I placed all my hopes on you. In the end, you repay me like this. It's over. I have worked hard for most of my life, and you ruined it all." Luo Naxing gritted his teeth and said, "Dad, this is all the fault of the Red Gate. Even if we want to leave, we can't let them have an easy time. We have mobilized all our elite forces, and we are afraid that we can't defeat them." Luo Xianai snorted and said, "Even if we flatten the Red Gate now, it will not help, and we will lose some people. Of course, this matter will not be let go." At this time, the driver turned around and said, "Master, the management office said that the people from Basin Academy are chasing us. And for some reason, they seem to know that we are using channel 4 and are chasing us here." Luo Xianai's face darkened, and he picked up a red communication machine placed next to him. He shouted, "Tang Jun, let your people guard channel 4. You can die, but you can't let anyone come over." The communication machine made a rustling sound, and then a gloomy voice said, "Got it, master." Just behind the passage, Beizan appeared, and in front of her, the black-cloaked man like Hei Wu was leading the way. For a cultivator like Wei Fenghua, even without a vehicle, running is not slow. The passage kept retreating. Suddenly, Luo Yan saw a figure standing in the passage ahead. That was a tall man, middle-aged, with thin cheeks and dull eyes. He stood there holding a trident, looking like a fisherman going to fish. But in Luo Yan's Wuwang Zuan, such information popped up. Zhang Bei, 41 years old, Luo Mansion's Death Warrior. Realm, Advanced Level 1. Be careful. Wei Fenghua's voice rang out. "That man is not simple." Luo Yan said in a deep voice, "Teacher, you go first. Leave this man to me." Wei Fenghua glanced at him and nodded decisively. The man named Zhang Bei heard Luo Yan's words, and his eyes did not change at all. But when Wei Fenghua came nearby, he suddenly rushed forward, tightened the trident in his hand, and stabbed forward fiercely. He moved. The whole person's momentum changed. From being ordinary before, it became fierce, and the halberd stabbed out a whistling sound. But at this time, a sword light slashed on the trident. Dragon Elephant. Luo Yan drew his heavy sword, and used the footwork of dragonfly skimming water, to flash in front of Wei Fenghua. He blocked Zhang Bei's trident with one sword. He did not stop moving. After blocking the opponent's weapon, Luo Yan jumped up, and kicked out 3 times in a row. He attacked the opponent's heart. Zhang Bei pulled the trident, and retreated step by step, to resolve Luo Yan's 3 kicks. But he also made way for Wei Fenghua and others to pass. Zhang Bei's eyes suddenly became fierce, and a burst of blood surged on the trident, and then threw it at Wei Fenghua. At the same time, the dragon elephant turned into a thunderbolt, and chased the trident, smashing it on this heavy halberd, and chopping it to the ground. Zhang Bei rushed over, blood surged on his fist, and punched at Luo Yan again and again. Luo Yan did not show him courtesy. The dragon elephant opened and closed in his hand, using slow to beat fast, and smashed Zhang Bei's fist into pieces. At this time, Zhang Bei kicked the trident on the ground, and the harpoon-like weapon flew towards Luo Yan with a whistling sound. Luo Yan pressed the hilt of the dragon elephant sword with his thumb, dragged the sword and swept it, chopping the trident away. Zhang Bei reached out to catch it, turned it around, and unloaded the force on the weapon. Then he held the halberd with both hands, and when he looked at Luo Yan again, the man's eyes were full of vigilance. Through the series of fights just now, he could already see that Luo Yan was a master, although he was only half his age. But his skills were definitely not weaker than his. Shouting loudly, Zhang Bei's whole body burst out with Yuan Li. I don't know what kind of martial arts he practiced. Blood surged around his body, and condensed around him into the outline of a blood-colored octopus. The front end of each tentacle of the octopus had a face. Sadness, happiness, and joy were all different, revealing a weirdness. Luo Yan stepped back a few steps, and a pale golden halo gradually appeared around him, making Luo Yan, from the man to the sword, seem to be coated with a layer of gold. Dazzling. Chapter 560, Pursuit. With the full operation of the Yan Yang Sutra, the temperature of the entire passage rose slightly. At this time, blood light emanated from Luo Yan's body again. The blood red light illuminated the entire passage, and the ground disappeared wherever it passed. Instead, it was replaced by blood water that seemed to be sticky and illusory. As the blood water surged, it covered the ground of the passage, and bubbles appeared on the surface from time to time. Luo Yan's body was even more flowing with blood light that seemed to be real, emitting a monstrous fierce flame. Secret method. Blood pagoda. After obtaining Fang Yao's notes, Luo Yan has improved a lot in this secret method. Now, every time Luo Yan attacks, the number of blood blades increases by 1, a total of 2. Once the secret method is activated, the dragon elephant rises up. Suddenly, blood bursts in the passage. The sun halo sword light brought by the dragon elephant's body and the 2 blood blades attached to each attack of the blood pagoda intertwined with each other. Zhang Bei's pupils dilated. Although Luo Xianai used his own connections to collect several secret methods for these dead men to practice. But how can the secrets collected by Luo Xianai be compared with those obtained from the giant beast strategic palace by Luo Yan? At this moment, with the secrets and skills, although Zhang Bei defended with all his strength, wounds continued to appear on his cheeks, arms, and thighs. They were both advanced cultivators. The 2 of them, one from the academy and the other from the common people, were clearly superior. Just now, he was able to fight back and forth with Luo Yan. But now, Luo Yan was serious. Zhang Bei was in danger. However, this dead warrior also had some real skills in his hands. Often in times of crisis, he would use clever tricks to dissolve Luo Yan's sword. He held on for nearly 10 minutes. Luo Yan also began to figure out that Zhang Bei didn't know it was due to the skills, but had learned some tricky and vicious ways. His trident could sometimes make some strange movements, which played an unexpected role. In addition, it might be because of the skills. When Zhang Bei attacked, The trident kept making strange whistles. These whistles had the effect of affecting the opponent's mind. But for Luo Yan, it has little effect. Just a few dragon scales float up behind him, and with the fierce aura of the dragon blood essence, these influences can be dispersed. On that day in the Valley of Sorrow, even those strange cries could not affect Luo Yan, let alone this dead soldier. Although Zhang Bei's moves and skills are strange, these swords take an unconventional approach. If the winner cannot be determined in a short period of time, the opponent will counterattack. Just like now. Luo Yan pressed forward step by step, and the Sun Halo sword light and the dark red blood sword intertwined. Zhang Bei was already covered in wounds and bleeding. You must know that the Blood Pagoda also has the effect of the Blood Shura. The attack is accompanied by Blood Evil, which can hinder the healing of the target's wounds. Gradually, Zhang Bei has become tired. Luo Yan's face was neither sad nor happy. After leaving several wounds on his opponent again, the dragon and elephant posture, fish and birds are frightened on the heavy sword. Immediately, Zhang Bei seemed to be suppressed by 10 dragons and 10 elephants, and his Yuanli and even his body could hardly move. The dragon elephant took the opportunity to raise his Yuanli. Luo Yan's Yuanli exploded. The heavy sword disappeared in Zhang Bei's eyes. Instead, there was a huge blood moon with a halo around it. The blood moon pressed down with an unmatched momentum, as if it was going to crush everything. It came down with a whistling sound. Combat skills. The crescent moon broke through the clouds. Full moon. Zhang Bei's eyes were all red. The trident turned into a lightning. It crashed into the blood moon, but it was smashed into pieces by the blood moon. In the end, Zhang Bei embraced the blood moon. The whole person was thrown out and stuck to the wall of the passage. Then thousands of blood arrows spurted out from his eyes, nose, mouth, and whole body. After 1 second, his body slid down from the wall and sat down on the ground, his chest no longer rising and falling. Luo Yan took a deep breath, put away the secret method of the sun, picked up the dragon elephant, and hurried on at full speed. He used the secret method wind and cleanness. Although he could not be said to be faster than lightning, he ran faster than usual. The underground maze of Luo Mansion was complicated, and often there would be a fork in the road after running for a while. Fortunately, everyone in the academy marked it when they passed by. I don't know who used spray paint to leave red arrows so that Luo Yan would not get lost. On the way, he would also see the bodies of the dead men of Luo Mansion. In addition to Zhang Bei, Luo Yan saw 2 more bodies in a blink of an eye. I don't know which instructor shot them. These dead men were all aiming for the lives of the other party. Unless the realm and combat power were much higher than them, it was basically impossible to leave them alive. However, the teachers in the academy were not the kind of women's kindness. They knew to kill when they should kill, so they would not show mercy to these dead men. After another moment, Luo Yan heard a woman's shouting in front of him. He immediately stopped and used the secret method, opened the ghost wheel, gathered all the energy in his body, and sneaked over. At a bend, he saw a graceful figure. She was a mature woman in her 20s. She had an attractive figure. She was wearing a black veil, and her snow-white navel could be vaguely seen. As she moved, her 2 slender thighs were occasionally exposed. Although she was fighting desperately, she was still charming and seductive, and she was really a beauty on earth. The one fighting against this beauty was not a human, but 2 black and blue ghost hands. Blue Zaro. This was Bei's weirdness. But no one was seen at the scene. Luo Yan thought for a moment, and knew that Bei might have been hidden by Hiwu. Sure enough, the next second, a fragrant breeze surged around Luo Yan. Bei's petite figure emerged from the void. "Student Luo," she said in a low voice. Luo Yan nodded, looked at her, and made sure that the girl was not injured, then looked at the charming woman. The charming woman should be practicing some kind of evil martial arts. Black hair was all over her body, and she turned into a hunchbacked old woman behind her. The phantom, the old woman's face was full of wrinkles, and her eyes were shining with green light. Whenever the seductive woman tried to grab the blue Zaro's arms, the phantom would stretch out a chicken claw-like hand, and then a part of it would disappear into the air. The disappeared part would ignore the distance, and appear at the blue Zaro's arms, and then grab the 2 ghost hands with blue fire. Bei whispered, "That woman is also driving some kind of weirdness. Her weirdness can ignore the distance to attack, and can even ignore the protection of skills or mystical arts, and directly act on the human body. But that way, the power will be greatly reduced, and you must see the opponent. Just now, a teacher accidentally got caught and got a little injured. I took over the battle. I used black nothingness to become invisible, so she couldn't see me and couldn't attack. But in this way, the blue Zio's combat power will be greatly reduced. Otherwise, Bei wrinkled his nose. Luo Yan closed his eyes slightly. This is not a competition. No need to be polite to her. Since she won't move, then I'll just die here. Luo Yan's eyes, though red, flashed with a strong cold light. A few dragon scales floated up behind him, and Luo Yan raised the dragon elephant and flashed out from the corner. With wind and thunder, he rushed straight to his opponent. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 561. The yellow bird is in the front. Luo Yan was coming aggressively. The seductive woman noticed it immediately. At this time, Lan Xiao grabbed her head with both hands, and she was caught in an instant. But the figure turned into a group of black wet snakes, but those snakes were also condensed by black aura. Lan Xiao's hands erupted with black and blue flames, and immediately killed all the snakes. The seductive woman who used some strange method to replace her body appeared 7 steps away. She looked at Luo Yan, and raised her hand, to grab him through the air. The phantom of the old woman behind her immediately raised her chicken claw-like hand, and inserted it into the air. A part of the arm disappeared in the air. The disappeared arm had already appeared in Luo Yan's body, and was about to press Luo Yan's powerful beating heart. At this moment, a beast roar came from somewhere in the passage. This roar was filled with monstrous evil intentions. It made people's blood coagulate. The illusory palm that was holding Luo Yan stopped. Then a large amount of amber light condensed into the phantom of a dragon lizard with bared fangs and claws and black thorns on its back. The beast opened its bloody mouth and bit the illusory arm like a chicken claw. Bit it off. 7 steps away, the charming woman screamed, and huge teeth marks suddenly appeared on her smooth and white arm. The flesh and blood suddenly blurred, and black and red blood spurted out. Take this opportunity. Luo Yan stepped forward and rushed to the distance of 7 steps between him and the charming woman in the blink of an eye. The woman showed a pitiful expression at this time and even raised her white chest as if she wanted to give herself to Luo Yan and threw herself towards Luo Yan. She used some kind of charm. Seeing that Luo Yan was so young, she knew that young people of this age were at the age of blood and vigor. She planned to use charm to distract Luo Yan and then kill him. Luo Yan was indeed stunned. He wondered why this woman deliberately exposed her weakness. Since she came to me, how could I miss her? Immediately, the dragon elephant roared and turned into a flash of lightning. The ancient and majestic Han sword penetrated directly between the woman's breasts and came out from her back. Wow. The woman's figure suddenly turned into a group of poisonous snakes. The group of snake phantoms were all killed by Luo Yan's sword energy. As soon as they appeared, they withered and disappeared. The charming woman who appeared in the passage again had an angry look on her face. She thought that she had conquered countless men with this charm. Even Luo Xianai was obsessed with her. But this red-eyed young man didn't know what was good for him and didn't know how to cherish women. How could he pierce the chest of a girl who threw herself into his arms? Question mark? At this moment, a huge white glove appeared on her head. With a light touch of the glove, the woman and the old woman's phantom were temporarily separated. At the same time, Lan Xiao penetrated from the woman's back with one hand, and 5 claws broke out from her abdomen. Blood splattered. After being separated from the old woman's phantom, she could no longer use the substitute technique to evade. She screamed. As soon as she screamed, Lan Xiao's other hand had already twisted her neck. The charming woman died on the spot. Exclamation mark. Luo Yan looked behind him and saw that Bei had already released the black nothingness and used the magic master instead. Just now, he used the magic master to separate the old woman's phantom from the charming woman, thus creating a good opportunity for Lanzio to kill her. At this moment, Bei's thoughts floated up like bubbles. It's just that her breasts are a little bigger than mine. Her legs are a little longer than mine. What's so great about that? I'm so angry. If it weren't for the burden of 8 weird things, I wouldn't be so short. Exclamation mark. Luo Yan didn't use the Wu Wang burning eyes to read Bei's thoughts, but seeing that she was angry, and seeing that she looked at the charming woman on the ground from time to time, he thought about it and said awkwardly, "You are prettier than her." Bei was stunned for a moment, and then he was happy, as if he had drunk honey, but he said it a little embarrassedly. "Let's go catch someone." "Yes. This is the most important thing." Luo Yan raised the dragon elephant and rushed forward. Bei summoned the old bones, and the bone hands formed spider-like limbs on her body. Bei didn't have to move herself, and those bone hands quickly took her to chase Luo Yan. Classmate Luo just praised me. Hehe. Asterisk 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 exit of channel 4. A sightseeing car drove out from inside. It stopped near the exit. There was already a car ready here. Luo Xianai and his son hurriedly got out of the car and ran towards the car in a hurry. Luo Xianai looked around and then stopped. "Wait a minute." Luo Nangsing said anxiously, "Dad, let's go. Now that Tang Jun has come out to intercept, we only have him left as a death squad. If they are all killed, the people from the academy will catch up." Luo Xianai shook his head. "Something is wrong. All the people are left here to meet them are gone." Luo Nangsing only then realized that the garage coming out of channel 4 was indeed eerily quiet. At this time, the door in front opened and someone inside applauded. "As expected of Mr. Luo, you are alert." Someone got out of the car. Big back hair, gold necklace, lapel suit. Huangquan organization, Bao Yanghua. Luo Xianai was stunned. "Is it you? It has been a while since he last saw Bao Yanghua." At that time, Bao Yanghua got the information he provided and went out of the city to deal with Luo Yan. As a result, the student returned to the underground city, but Bao Yanghua did not come back. Luo Xianai thought that Bao Yanghua died outside, but he didn't expect to run into him at this time. "Why are you here?" Luo Xianai took 2 steps back cautiously. Bao Yanghua stood up with a smile. "Thanks to Mr. Tarlo, all my men are dead. So I'm waiting here for you, Luo family father and son. I plan to see you off to the end." Luo Xianai was stunned, then said in a deep voice, "What do you mean? What does the death of your men have to do with me?" Bao Yanghua laughed and said, "Pretend. Keep pretending. Good for you, Luo Xianai. I've been traveling all over the country for so many years, and I think I have a lot of experience in the world. But I didn't expect that I would still fall into the hands of an old fox like you. You teamed up with that student, surnamed Luo, to kill me. Do you think I don't know?" Luo Xianai looked puzzled. "I teamed up with Luo Yan. What are you crazy about? He is the enemy who killed my son. How could I team up with him?" Bao Yanghua said gloomily, "I don't want to waste time talking to you. I'm not afraid to tell you that I was the one who caused you to be hunted tonight. If it weren't for this, you old fox would have a lot of masters around you, and it wouldn't be easy for me to deal with you, even if I wanted to. But now, the old man Gao and the other assassins around you are all used to intercept the pursuers. I want to see what tricks you, Luo, can come up with tonight." As he spoke, a black shadow rose up behind Bao Yanghua. The black shadow twisted and squirmed, and turned into a towering tree. Eyeballs suddenly popped out of the black tree, and looked at Luo Xianai and his son. Luo Xianai shouted, "I don't know what you are talking about. I have nothing to do with Luo Yan." The voice kept echoing in the garage. Chapter 562. Emergency. The sound of footsteps echoed in the passage. Luo Yan, holding the dragon elephant, soon saw Wei Fenghua. He was standing next to a corpse, which should be a dead man of the Luo family. "Teacher." Luo Yang called. Wei Fenghua held a handkerchief, covered his mouth and coughed twice, then nodded. "You are here. Let's go." They have already caught up. Maybe they have caught Luo Xianai and his son now. Wei Fenghua smiled, then used his body skills to rush to the exit of the passage. It was not far from the exit. Soon, Luo Yan and the other 2 came to a garage. They saw Liu Ruohan and others were already in the garage and surrounded in a circle. Hearing footsteps, they turned around. Old Wei, a teacher, waved his hand. The father and son of the Luo family were killed. This news shocked Luo Yan and Wei Fenghua. They knew that the one who did it was definitely not someone from the academy. After all, they were only here to catch people, not to kill people. Luo Yan and Wei Fenghua hurried to the crowd, only to see the bodies of Luo Xianai and Luo Nangxing lying on the ground not far from a car. They didn't know what horrible things they saw before they died. The bodies had twisted expressions and were terrified. Their eyeballs were about to fall out. Luo Xianai's jaw was torn off, and Luo Nangxing's tongue was missing a piece. The death was tragic. Wei Fenghua looked around and found the surveillance in the garage, but the surveillance had been destroyed. Obviously, the murderer had destroyed the surveillance. What should we do? Several teachers looked at Wei Fenghua. Wei Fenghua said in a deep voice, "Don't touch the bodies. Protect the scene. I will notify the city lord." Soon, the Mecha Corps and the security department came together. They took over the next thing. "Okay, classmates. There's nothing for us to do next. You did a good job. Let's go back to the academy." Wei Fenghua clapped his hands to attract the students' attention. They left the garage, and there was a main road outside, not far from the exit of the city. It seems that Luo Xianai was planning to leave the city. He had a chance to succeed. The group of death warriors he trained were indeed loyal to their duties, but unfortunately, Luo Xianai failed in the end. Luo Yang guessed that it might be Liang Hua who killed Luo Xianai. However, it doesn't matter who killed him now. The important thing is that Luo Xianai is dead. The death of Luo Xianai means that Kaiming Heavy Industry and its subordinate companies will usher in huge changes. This change will even affect the entire Guangling city. Dizeng only wanted to arrest Luo Xianai before, and if it was just an arrest, the impact would be limited. But now, something unexpected happened to Dizeng, and Guangling is bound to usher in a wave of turmoil. Of course, students like Luo Yan will not feel this turmoil. At this moment, a school bus came to pick them up. On the way back to the college, the students discussed tonight's actions. Liu Ruohan still said with lingering fear, "Those assassins are so scary. Even if their combat power level is similar to ours, when they fight, their attacks are both crazy and fierce, and they fight with their lives at risk." Zheng Shan also said, "They don't care about their own lives at all. They are cruel to others, and even more cruel to themselves." The students nodded one after another. Wei Fenghua smiled and said, "Although we didn't catch Luo Xianai tonight, you had a special experience, and didn't waste this night. Death warriors are like this. They accept offerings from their masters. But when necessary, they can die for their masters at any time. These people are very scary. What's scary is not their fighting power, but their hearts and means. People who are death warriors are usually eccentric or even twisted. Such people usually don't care about their own life or death. They usually use a lose-lose style of fighting. When facing them, you have to be cautious step by step. Don't rush to defeat them. Be patient. With the experience tonight, I believe you can handle the same situation better next time." Li Bohe nodded and said, "When we encounter such people, it's best for us to join forces and take care of each other so that we are not easily injured and can suppress them faster." The students quickly communicated. But at this time, suddenly, a sharp and piercing alarm sounded over the underground city. Everyone was stunned. Then they reacted. This is a giant beast warning. Soon, everyone's mobile phone in the school bus received a message. "We have detected a small herd of animals on the surface that are about to enter the third warning zone and may pass through the underground city. All residents of the underground city are requested to take shelter nearby." Immediately, the school bus drove to the nearest shelter according to regulations. Not long after, the shelter was arrived. It was the first time for Luo Yan to come to such a place. Following the teachers and classmates, he entered the shelter under the command of the security guard and followed the passage to an underground facility similar to a gymnasium. Shelters are usually built underground, with strong armor, good ventilation systems, and food reserves, which can last from several days to a week. Luo Yan and his party gathered in a corner, watching more and more residents of the underground city pour into the shelter. It was nighttime now, and people had basically lain down. Now that the alarm was suddenly sounded, many people here did not even have time to change into casual clothes and came directly in pajamas. Many parents were still holding yawning children in their arms, and some children were still sleeping soundly on their parents' shoulders. 4 years have passed since the natural disaster. People have become accustomed to this kind of life. No one complained, and there was not much panic. Basically, they followed the instructions of the security guards or the side signs, and arrived at the designated location in an orderly manner. I don't know what the situation is on the ground. Bae looked at Luo Yan with some concern. Luo Yan shook his head. I don't know, but I believe in the commander. At the same time, Guangling Corps headquarters. Zeng, who still served as the corps commander, walked quickly into the command hall and came to the bridge. What's the situation? Chief of Staff Xing Feng held a tablet computer with some data and charts displayed on it. The small herd will enter the third warning zone in 15 minutes. But the computer deduced their route of action, not for our Guangling. But if they don't turn around, they will pass Guangling. At least several giant beasts of varying sizes will pass over our underground city. Zeng nodded. Which teams are on duty on the surface now? Team 4 of the second shift, and Team 7 of the first shift. Xing Feng smiled and said, thanks to the new recruits not long ago, the surface duty team can now luxuriate in deploying 2 teams. Zeng nodded, holding the fence of the bridge, and said loudly, notify the 2 teams of Team 4 of the second shift and Team 7 of the first shift on the surface. Tell them to stay alert and intercept the giant beasts that may pass through the underground city. Also, send all the mechs of the first and second shifts out. Team 1 will go to the third warning zone for support. Team 2 will enter the second warning zone. Never let the giant beasts approach the underground city, even if there is only one. Chapter 563 Black Thunder. Greedy Wolf. On the surface. In the cockpit of the Mecha Black Thunder, the captain's voice sounded from the command console. Everyone follow me. We have to make sure that the Behemoths don't pass through the dungeon. Hearing this, Hiheo said excitedly, great, I hope to encounter a behemoth that is more resistant to attacks, so that I can test the power of the upgraded Black Thunder. Come on. In the communication channel, in the private conversation, Sujiuying's avatar was flashing. I went to the desperate battlefield and worked hard to exchange 4 contribution points to upgrade the mecha to an advanced body. You'd better not damage the Black Thunder. Hiheo's nostrils expanded, and he snorted. I have greatly improved the defensive performance of the Black Thunder. How can it be broken so easily? But you have strengthened the weapon system of the Greedy Wolf. I don't know what's the use of that. If you encounter a high-level behemoth and open the anti-membrane, you can only stare blankly. Sujiuying smiled and said, what are you afraid of? My elemental fourth cannon has also been upgraded, and I can fight against the high-level ones. Besides, if you can't beat it, don't you still have you? Hiheo laughed dryly. That's true. You still have to rely on me at the critical moment. At this time, the captain's voice sounded in the team channel. Attention, a small group of beasts is about to arrive. Hiheo quickly concentrated. He looked at the giant beast radar, which showed a spectrum signal, about 20 in number. They were closely together and kept moving. From the movement trajectory deduced by the computer, the small group of beasts will brush shoulders with the dungeon. In other words, there will be a few giant beasts entering the dungeon's warning range. If they kill the giant beasts that enter the dungeon's warning range here, the dungeon will basically be safe. The captain continued on the communication channel. Squad 1 has come to the third warning zone for support. We don't have to force it. Intercept if you can, and kill if you can. But pay attention to safety, especially the new recruits. Don't be too aggressive, and listen to orders. Now is not the time for you to sacrifice. Hiheo whispered, Captain, what you said is really unlucky. Sujiuying laughed and said, it sounds like he is talking to you. Hiheo rarely refuted her this time. At this time, looking out of the panoramic window, a flying dust curtain can be seen. Then, the earth shook. One by one, the mechas stood on the ground like ancient giants, turning on the external lighting, holding the guns tightly, and ready for battle. After a while, The Behemoth radar showed that several spectral signals had entered the edge of the third warning zone. Among those signals, 1 was orange and 3 were blue. 1 mid-level, 3 low-level. Jiuying said softly, "It's nothing. Don't be careless." Jiuying reminded, "There is an upper-level beast in the small herd." Yes, among the spectral signals flashing in the small herd, there is a blood-red color, which is extremely dazzling. Jiuying immediately checked the status of his mecha. Black Thunder has been upgraded to a high-level body. In addition to installing the supercore matrix, the material outer armor has also been replaced. But the biggest improvement is now a pair of hanging equipment on the outside of the mecha's arms. Heavy level horn shield, Changlao. Changlao has 2 shields with a unique shape. In the structure of the shield, a sharp angle structure is also added. This allows Changlao to be used for attack in addition to defense. The attack methods of the shield are generally slapping and bumping. In addition to the first 2, Changlao can also stab and chop because of the sharp angle part. Of course, as a shield, the main function of Changlao is still defense. Therefore, in addition to its thick armor, it also has the effect of absorbing kinetic energy, which is a major evaluation criterion for it as a heavy weapon. At this moment, all indicators of the Black Thunder are within the normal range. This gives Jiuying the confidence to face the challenge of the giant beast. Soon, outside the panoramic window, Jiuying has seen the figures of giant beasts one after another. 3 lower level beasts are Tulili and Arao. That looks like a gorilla. Jiuying has never seen the middle level beast. It looks like a fox, but it has a pair of wings. It is gliding at low altitude, and it looks like it is driving the lower level beasts below. Jiuying immediately matched it. The result came out soon. Codename, pronounced as B, level, intermediate level 3. Type, caterpillar. Features, flying, steaming clouds, calling wind, driving fire. Jiuying's voice sounded in the communication channel. The classic of mountains and seas, Dangshanjing records. 300 miles to the south is Gufeng Mountain, which has no vegetation, but abundant golden jade. There is a beast there, which looks like a fox with wings and sounds like a wild goose. It is called. When it is seen, there will be a severe drought in the world. Other beasts are fine, but we can't let the fox pass, otherwise the underground city will be short of water. While speaking, the armor of the Tanlang mecha kept opening. Not only did a missile launcher rise on its back, weapon platforms were deployed on both sides, and even a gun barrel stretched out of its mouth. The captain's voice rang out in the communication channel. Attack. The next second, the Tanlang fired missiles. Various weapon platforms opened fire, and the Yuanli cannon in its mouth blasted out a beam of light. Suddenly, the artillery fire from the Tanlang seemed to be able to slaughter all the beasts rushing towards it. One rider is worth 1,000. The made a sad cry like a wild goose, fluttered its wings, and flew high. Then sparks flickered in his mouth, and then a touch of red spitted out of his mouth. In an instant, the red light turned into an exploding magma, and sprayed towards the ground. Exclamation mark. Drive the fire. The stream of fire was rose red, and the flames were as gorgeous, as if they broke through the clouds. The golden red fire wave spread on the ground, and everything burned wherever it passed, and black smoke lingered. The stream of fire swept towards the Ganlang with high temperature, and at this time, the Black Thunder rushed over like a god. The fire illuminated every line on the dark mecha. The mecha raised the double shields of the Changlao, and closed them above its head, blocking the stream of fire sprayed down by the high temperature fire stream did not affect the Ganlang. Jiuying and Jiuying have been partners for a long time. While the Black Thunder blocked the fire stream, the Ganlang raised his head and swept the Yuanli cannon horizontally, creating fireballs on the wings of the flying fox. The fox's wings were blown to pieces, and it fell on fire. The captain's voice rang out in the communication channel. Jiuying, you go. Okay. Jiuying agreed and rushed towards the fox with Black Thunder, let out a miserable cry, and crawled on the ground. He hadn't found the mecha that shot him down yet. In his field of vision, a black shield was expanding. Bang! Black Thunder's arm swung. Changlao's corner shield hit the fox firmly, causing it to roll its eyes. Chapter 564 Award. In the cockpit, Jiuying was about to seize the opportunity to pursue the enemy. he suddenly heard Su Jiu yelling, "Be careful." Although Hiheo usually likes to argue with Su Jiu, he trusts Su Jiu very much on the battlefield. Su Jiu will turn on the mimicry when driving the mecha. In that state, her intuition and senses will be several times or even more sharp than usual. This is why every time on the battlefield, Su Jiu always suffers the least and lightest injuries. Although Hiheo didn't notice anything now, he didn't feel anything. Lei still retreated decisively, and the Changlao double shields were put together in front of him, protecting the important parts of the body such as the head and chest. Almost at the moment when Lei retreated, there was no sign. Between the mecha and the flying fox, a few intermittent flames appeared, like gossamer. In an instant, the flames expanded and turned into a series of entangled and crisscrossing fire dragons. Dozens of fire dragons shot up into the sky, standing between Black Thunder and the fox beast like a wall of fire. If Hiheo had retreated a little slower, his mecha would have been washed away by the fire dragons. Hiheo was blocked by the fire dragons and could not pursue. At this time, he heard a strange howl in the distance. He looked into the distance through the panoramic window, and there was a giant beast faintly visible over there. It looked like a dog with multiple tails, and there were flashes of flowing fire between its figure. It seemed to be wearing shackles between its foreclaws, and it was waving several iron chains with only one section but sparks flying. "What is that?" Hiheo closed his eyes slightly. Su Jiu's voice sounded in the communication machine. "That is a high-level giant beast. But there is no information about it in the archives. It should be a giant beast that has not been discovered yet." Hiheo's nostrils expanded, snorted softly, and felt annoyed. As the Yambu space continued to open, more and more blanks appeared in the giant beast files in the giant beast strategic mansion. This is not a good thing, which means that more and more unknown giant beasts are being released to the earth. God knows how many giant beasts are still in the Yambu space, and how many foreign objects have not been released. At this time, protected by those fire dragons, the recovered fox beast looked in the direction of the giant dog in the distance, and then his eyes shot out fierce light and resentment, looking at Lei. But he did not cross the fire dragon to attack, but turned around and staggered towards the direction of the giant dog. When the fire dragon disappeared, the fox beast had already left the scope of the warning area. In the giant beast radar, this small herd continued to move forward, but had deviated from the original track and left from the southwest side of Guangling City. Guangling Underground City, Core Command Center. Seeing the herd deviate from the track, many people breathed a sigh of relief. Zeng patted Xing Feng. "Old Zeng, I'll leave it to you next." Xing Feng nodded. "Fortunately, it's just a false alarm. Although Guangling is not so bad that it can't even deal with a small herd of beasts, there will inevitably be casualties." After the Battle of Misty Canyon that day, the Guangling Corps was seriously injured. Although the Corps has been supplemented with new soldiers recently, its vitality has not yet recovered. Therefore, both Xing Feng and Zeng thought that they would not fight if they could. The herd's migration now is naturally the best result. Zeng left. Xing Feng asked the technician to use the computer to calculate the trajectory of the herd. After finding that it did not go to any underground city, the chief of staff ordered the mecha to return to the city. A storm passed just like that. However, after all the people in the command hall left, a computer that was still calculating the dynamics of the herd suddenly showed a new trajectory on the screen. Judging from the new trajectory, the herd will eventually go to the underground city of Pingyao. But at this time, the herd was too far away from Guangling, and their signals eventually disappeared from the screen. The next day, Basin Academy, Student Union. Luo Yan was called over early in the morning. When he came in, Zeng and Wei Fenghe were here. Luo Yan came early, and the others had not arrived yet. There were only 3 of them in the room. Wei Fenghe smiled and said, "The city lord is here today to reward everyone. I have classes later, so I'll leave first." After coughing twice, Wei Fenghe patted Luo Yan's shoulder and left. The door closed. Luo Yan said softly, "Luo Xianai and his son might have been the work of our Yanghua." "Which Huangquan Corps member?" Zeng said seriously. "I asked my friends in the south to find out about Huangquan. This organization is just as mysterious as Black Witch." "My friends in the south," gave me some information, but not much. What is certain is that Huangquan did not emerge in the past 1 or 2 years. The year it first appeared was the 8th year after the discovery of Gixu. Luo Yan's expression moved. So, they have been operating for more than 40 years. Dizeng nodded slightly. Gixu was discovered more than half a century ago, and Huangquan and Black Witch have been operating for at least several dozen years. This time is neither long nor short. But what is certain is that the foundation of these two families is far greater than that of other underground organizations. Huangquan has lived in the southern border for a long time, and Black Witch has been entrenched in the north. Now that Huangquan has begun to infiltrate the back door and wants to take over the north, I'm afraid the southern border is already their world. Luo Yan said softly, but Black Witch will not let them succeed. Yukiishu of Xuanming Department intends to go to war with Huangquan. Dizeng raised his mouth slightly and said, this cannot be solved by 1 or 2 wars. The infiltrators in the north are just the vanguard of Huangquan, and may even be cannon fodder. But according to what you said, Black Witch has loose governance and even encourages internal strife. This kind of business method of raising Gu can indeed obtain super strong and outstanding people. But once an external enemy invades, such a business method will inevitably cause a series of problems. Take your Xuanxin department as an example. The woman surnamed Yu may not be able to fight the enemy wholeheartedly. She must be careful to prevent someone from stealing the credit. Luo Yan nodded, and he admired Dizeng in his heart. He had just returned and encountered various things. He had not had time to report the matter of Xuanming department to Dizeng in detail. He also did not tell Dizeng that the Jumang department was planning to attack Xuanming department. However, Dizeng deduced a lot from the business method of Black Witch, and it was hard for him not to admire it. At this time, footsteps were heard. The two immediately stopped discussing this topic, and then Liu Ruohan and other student union members pushed the door open. Dizeng greeted everyone with a smile. Luo Yan found that, since becoming the city lord, the leader has smiled more and more. After the students were seated, Dizeng looked around and smiled. Students, you worked hard last night. Like I said before, I won't let you work in vain. So, I just discussed it with Feng He. Decided to reward everyone with credits. Anyone who participated in the action last night will be given 100 credits. For those who kill the enemy, 500 credits will be awarded for each enemy killed. Chapter 565 Smiling at the Splendor. Participation in the action will earn you 100 credits. Killing an enemy will earn you 500 credits. The students were all excited. Did you see that? The student union's benefits are so good. Xiaoping looked at Luo Yan and others with a smile. How is it? I didn't lie to you. Joining the student union is very profitable. Zheng Shan nodded vigorously. He didn't do anything last night, but he earned 100 credits for running for one night. This is a good thing that you can't find even with a lantern. Calculate it this way. Student Luo should get the highest reward. Liu Ruohan simply calculated it. Among us, only classmate Luo killed 2 enemies in a row, right? Luo Yan shook his head. No, I only killed 1 assassin by myself. The other one was with Xiao Bei. Yang Leke said with a smile. That's not a small number. Your brother killed 1 by himself, so it counts as 500. Cooperating with Xiao Bei, I get 250, so it's 750. Add the 100 credits for the action itself. Old Luo, you earned 850 credits last night. Luo Yan glanced at Bei who was sitting next to him. He said, it can't be divided equally. At that time, I just played a role in distracting the opponent's attention. That assassin was killed by Xiao Bei. Besides, she had already fought with the opponent before I arrived. She consumed a lot of the enemy's physical energy. I will give a maximum of 100 credits. The rest should go to Xiao Bei. Bei lowered his head, and his little face was full of joy. It was not because he was happy about getting 400 credits, but because of Luo Yan's attitude. Dizeng smiled faintly and said, okay, then do as classmate Luo said. Feng He will do the statistics later, and the credits will be distributed within a week. Classmates, you have to keep working hard. Come on. After some encouragement, Dizeng left. Liu Ruohan stood up and said, classmates, it's my birthday this weekend. Everyone come to my house. Let's get together. Remember, don't bring gifts. It's fine as long as you're here. Xiaoping patted his stomach and said, Ruohan, you said that. Then I won't be polite. There are delicious food and drinks. Whoever doesn't go is a fool. So the matter was settled. When the meeting was over, Bei saw Yang Lixi with a tangled face. He couldn't help but pull Luo Yan's sleeve. What's wrong with Senior Yang? Luo Yan glanced at him. He said softly, don't worry about him. Needless to say, Luo Yang knew that Yang Lixi must be entangled in the gift issue. Although Liu Ruohan said that no gifts were needed. But it was a bit unreasonable to come empty-handed. So when the time came, everyone would still prepare some small gifts. Just don't think too much about it. Yang Lixi is different. He wants to pursue Liu Ruohan, so he naturally has to think more. Luo Yan is willing to help with other things. As for this kind of thing, forget it. In the next few days, Luo Yan returned to his normal routine. In these days, he found that he didn't know whether it was because of his improved realm or because of more practice. The sword shadow on the lake surface, obtained from the Sky Overlord Kun, had new changes when it was used. Now when Luo Yan uses the sword shadow, he no longer needs to separate it from his own shadow. As long as the shadows within 10 feet around him can be separated into sword shadows. In this way, he can directly separate the sword shadow from the shadow under the enemy's feet, and then attack with the sword shadow, which will be more difficult to prevent. In a blink of an eye, it was the weekend. In the afternoon, Luo Yan returned to the dormitory an hour earlier than usual. He had to go to a party in the evening. He couldn't go there with sweat all over his body. He went back to the dormitory and took a shower. After washing, he walked out of the bathroom with his upper body naked and wearing a pair of loose pants. There was a knock on the door. Luo Yan opened the door directly. Bei was outside the door. Student Luo, are you ready? Let's go together. Bei suddenly stopped. She looked at Luo Yan. Luo Yan had just taken a shower, shirtless, revealing lean muscle lines. A drop of water rolled down from his collarbone, across his chest covered with scars, and his belly with a clear mermaid line. Looking at Luo Yan like this, Bei's face became redder and redder. She suddenly cried out softly, I'll come back later. Then she ran away, as if she was running for her life. Luo Yan stuck his head out to take a look, then looked at his chest. Touched the uneven scars. Did she scare her? Luo Yan shrugged and closed the door. Outside the dormitory corridor, Bei was taking a deep breath. Calm down. Calm down. Bei, you are a lady. How can you look at classmate Luo's body and think about all these messy things? Yes, you are not that kind of person. But you can't blame me for this. Although classmate Luo has injuries on his body, those scars look much more attractive than other boys. I don't want to either. No, no. I need to calm down. Don't let people find out that I actually like a body like classmate Luo. Bei slowly exhaled and opened his eyes and saw Easy wearing thick glasses, almost sticking to his nose. Whose body do you like? Lizzie asked suspiciously. So when Luo Yan changed into casual clothes and went out, he heard Bei scream. He thought there was an enemy. But when he arrived, he saw Bei covering Lizzie's mouth with a nervous face. What are you doing? Luo Yan looked confused, and a question mark almost popped up on his head. Nothing, classmate Luo. Classmate Li and I are discussing which bus to take to classmate Liu's home. Bei smiled reluctantly. Lizzie made an unclear sound. Luo Yan shook his head. No need to bother. Lizzie said he would come to pick us up. Let's go. He may be waiting outside the school gate. Okay. After saying that, Bei stuck to Lizzie's face and tried to put on a threatening expression. Student Lizzie, you didn't hear anything just now, right? If I let go of your hand, you won't say anything to classmate Luo, right? I really don't want to go to your bedside to chat in the middle of the night, so you know what to do, right? Bei saw the glasses girl nodding repeatedly and then let go of her hand. In the distance, the evening light fell on Luo Yan, and when he turned around, his figure was outlined by the light with a golden frame. What are you doing? Let's go. Here we go. Bei pulled Lizzie and chased after him. The sunset simulated by the dome holographic panel reflected these young and energetic faces. This is exactly. At that time, the young man in spring clothes smiled and looked at the beauty without worry. A few days later, Luo Yan left Guangling alone and went to Yinwen base. Now, in Guangling, or in the Coyote camp, basically everything has been decided. It's time to go to Pingyao City to reclaim Liu Zhao's foundation and visit the woman named Yunrong on behalf of Dizeng. And, to find out the whereabouts of his relatives. Chapter 566 No One Left Behind. A few days later, Luo Yan arrived at the Yinwen base. This base, located near the bay, has an excellent location. There are no giant beasts living here, no forbidden areas, and it is close to the bay. Now that the cold winter has passed, there are dots of sails on the sea, but the fishermen of the base have gone out to sea to fish. The catch is also one of the incomes of the Yinwen base. The fish caught are divided into different grades and sent to various underground cities according to quality and quantity. After the natural disaster, seafood is sold at sky-high prices. It is difficult to buy it unless you are rich and powerful. After all, there are no farms now. Luo Yan paid the money in a low-key manner, entered the base, and walked on the main road of the base. There were bursts of fishy smell in the air. From time to time, there would be cars carrying fish passing by, and the live fish in the car would jump and splash the seawater used to sustain their lives all over the ground. When the sun at noon is baked, the whole base will be floating with a smell of sea. At that time, flies will also be attracted and gather on the road in piles. This situation will not change until the fishing season. When Luo Yan came that day, it was the fishing moratorium, so he had never seen such a situation. After several twists and turns, he came to the small building where Liu Zhao lived before. Before Luo Yan knocked on the door opened by itself. A shiny bald head reflected the sunlight during the day and rushed into Luo Yan's field of vision. Bald Yu Bei, with a murderous look on his face. He was about to rush out with several former subordinates from Team 3. Suddenly, he saw a man standing outside the door. Without thinking, he raised the long sword in his hand and slashed it. Luo Yan looked up with a cold look. When he saw that the other party was wearing a wooden mask, Yu Bei hurriedly put away the sword. A long sword with a cold light stopped on Luo Yan's head. Then it was thrown to the ground by Yu Bei with a clang. Yu Bei half knelt down and said, "I didn't know Mr. Chigi was here. Yu Bei deserves to die." Luo Yan said calmly in the mask, "Get up. Who are you going to trouble with this evil spirit?" Yu Bei stood up, and the fierce look on his face disappeared. He lowered his eyebrows and said respectfully, "Mr. Chigi has come from afar. Have a cup of hot tea first, and let Yu Bei report to you." Invited to the living room, Luo Yan sat down. Yu Bei asked someone to bring tea, and then closed the doors and windows. After drinking a few sips of hot tea, Luo Yan looked at the bald man. Yu Bei said with a smile, "Mr. Chigi, you guessed right. I was planning to take my brothers out to find trouble." Luo Yan hummed, "Who are you looking for trouble with?" "Chang Hei, the bastard from Pingyao City." As soon as that bastard arrived, he went from street to street and visited all the shops, big and small, on the street we control. Tell those bosses that from now on, all the annual interest will be handed over to him. Look, doesn't this count as the death of me, the Yu family? If I don't want to kill him, I might as well take his surname. These words were spoken with murderous intent, and it was difficult for Yu Bei to finish them with a smile. Luo Yan put down his teacup. "Who is this Chang Hei? How dare he do this?" Yu Bei snorted, "Mr. Chigi, you don't know. In the underground city of Pingyao, there is a bastard named Li. I don't know his exact name. People who know him call him Big Mouth Li. This guy is quite powerful in the old city of Pingyao, and he knows new upstarts in the city, like Qifei and Lin Xianglan. In the past 1 or 2 years, he has become a little arrogant and looks down on everyone. It's him, Qifei, Lin Xianglan and an old ghost named Mo. He vomited out all the business and assets of our Team 3 in Pingyao." The bald man clenched his fists and made a clattering sound. "Some time ago, I sent a message to the guy named Li, asking him to inform those guys to spit out what they had vomited. But they turned a deaf ear to my words. This time, the guy named Lee asked Chang-Hei to bring people to the Yinwen base, and he even wants to take over the interest we have at the base. This clearly shows that he doesn't take us seriously. How can I swallow this? Luo Yan smiled gently in the mask. From what you said, Chang-Hei came to Yinwen base, not only to spit out our last bit of life. The most important thing is to test our bottom line and our strength. Yu Bei was stunned, then scratched his head and said, then should I chop this man off or not? Luo Yan did not respond in a hurry, but asked, do you think those people in Pingyao combined are our opponents? Yu Bei thought about it and said decisively, not our opponents. When Liu Zhao was here, they didn't dare to fart. Mr. Chigi, you are only stronger than Liu Zhao. Those guys tied together are not even qualified to carry your shoes, so how can they have the confidence to be your opponents? Luo Yan said lightly, then that's easy. Big Mouth Lee wants to test, then just tell him the answer. Yu Bei still didn't understand. Mr. Chigi, what do you mean? I mean, don't leave anyone alive. Luo Yan looked up at him. Can you do it? Yu Bei laughed. Easy. I'll be back soon. After that, he went out with a few good players. Yinwen Base, Law Enforcement Team Office. Captain Yu was reading a report when he heard footsteps and saw his deputy Wang Jingao running in. The fat man came in and threw himself on Yu's desk, his face almost touching Yu's nose. Captain, something happened. The man surnamed Yu is crazy. He's killing people like crazy. He killed all of Chang-Hei and his group who came from Pingyao a few days ago. The bodies are still lying on the street. Yu's eyelids twitched, his head tilted back slightly, and he stretched out a hand to press Wang Fat's fat face back. Wang Jingao said with foam flying around his mouth, now the vendors over there have reported it. Captain, what do you think we should do? Yu showed a thoughtful expression. After a few breaths, his left eyebrow twitched. Okay. Fatty Wang jumped up. I'll gather my brothers over right away. The damn bald guy killed people in broad daylight on the street. He really doesn't take our law enforcement team seriously. Captain, you're right. If we don't do anything, people outside will think we are afraid of him. A hand was placed on his shoulder. Fatty Wang turned around. He saw Yu sighing and saying, what I mean is, don't meddle in other people's business. After all, this is someone else's family affair. Why should we get involved? Wang Jingao was stunned. Then we won't do anything. Except for Chang-Hei and his gang. Did the man surnamed Yu hurt anyone else? Yu asked slowly. The fat man shook his head. No. Yu sat back. That's it. For this kind of thing, just turn a blind eye. We'll go over later. Fatty Wang had no choice but to nod, and then said, Captain, you've changed. You weren't like this before. Yu glared at him, and glared Fatty Wang out. Chapter 567. Please offer your condolences. The creaking bedboard. The lights of different shades. The smell of alcohol in the air, mixed with the perfume of the woman. The soft moans and heavy breathing intertwined, composing the primitive music of mankind. After a while, the sound stopped. Then, the man on the bed turned over and touched a pack of cigarettes on the bedside table. He lit it. He took a deep breath and exhaled a smoke ring comfortably. The 28-year-old woman on the bed hugged a thin quilt. Her face was covered with fine beads of sweat, and her eyelids were a little difficult to open, but she still said, Master Lee is so fierce tonight. He killed me and made me lose my armor. I'm afraid I can't get out of bed tomorrow. Big Mouth Lee laughed and stretched out his black hand to reach into the quilt and wandered around. The thick palm was full of white jade, filling every inch of the palm. If you can't get out of bed, then don't. I'll support you. What are you afraid of? Big Mouth Lee, whose real name is Liao, is just that name, which is rarely mentioned nowadays. People outside mostly call him by his nickname. He was born in the lower class of society. His father was a fishmonger, but he suffered a stroke in his prime and was bedridden all year round. His mother took over the fish stall and competed with a group of burly men for fish every day in the fish market. Women with fierce personalities can hardly survive without such a character. Liao was influenced by his family and also developed a tough character. After graduating from high school, he dropped out of school, took over the fish stall, and gradually made a name for himself in the fish market. After that, he was unwilling to be a peddler and began to travel around the country. With his toughness and blood, he earned his first pot of gold in his life. From then on, he could not stop. Before the natural disaster, he operated underground processing factories for clothing, food, and fresh fish. He made huge profits. He heard about the existence of the underground city and bought the qualification to enter the Pingayao underground city with money. For many years, while running a black factory in the old city, he secretly went to the surface to plunder survivors. He brought them to the underground city, stuffed them into the black factory, and controlled these survivors, both as slaves and workers. To this day, in Pingayao Old City, a quarter of the dark gold flow is controlled by him, Lee. The big families in the city also asked him to do some things that were not presentable. In this way, gradually, Liao also got hold of the handles of some big families. He was the most unwilling to be lonely, so how could he be willing to just hide in the old city? So he used those handles and walked around, gradually letting his power spread to the city. Now, he has joined forces with the Lin, Qi, and Mo families. He has eroded the foundation of Liu Zhao, who originally occupied a quarter of the old city with himself. Today, Liao has already firmly sat in the first chair of the underground organization in the old city. It can be said that it is a peak of life and the highlight moment. There is nothing better than this. At this moment, Liao was in high spirits and went into bed to kill 300 rounds. Finally, after killing the woman to sleep from exhaustion, Liao sighed softly. One day, I will make that woman surnamed Lin lie on this bed. He thought of Lin Xianglin, a woman with elegant temperament and amazing means. When he first saw Lin Xianglin, he had improper thoughts. But the woman was of extraordinary status, and there was a strong man surnamed Zhao pursuing her. Although Liao was unruly, he did not dare to reach out to the woman rashly. But he always fantasized, and then used his toughness to make women cry and beg for mercy. Wake up the next day, wearing a coat, Liao looked at the calendar. Qingming festival will be in 2 days. He closed his eyes slightly and thought of his parents. So he went out and called the steward to ask him to arrange the Qingming festival ancestor worship. It's not that he is very filial, but he has been smooth sailing in recent years, and Liao believes in ghosts and gods. So every Qingming festival, he sweeps the tombs very diligently. After drinking a sip of ginseng tea, Liao called his confidant Jiuying. Jiuying was about 30 years old, tall and thin, with thick eyebrows and fierce eyes. He had been following Liao since he was 17, and he had been loyal to him for more than 10 years. Liao did not practice it himself, but he got Jiuying the visualization technique. Jiuying had some talent, and after practicing for a few years, he was now at the intermediate level. Master, you are looking for me? Jiuying came and asked respectfully. Liao nodded, put down the cup and said, how is Changhe? Did he say anything? Changhe was his capable subordinate, and was sent to Yunwan base by Liao a few days ago. Liao knew that the surname Liu occupied a street in Yunwan base, and collected interest from the shops of all sizes on that street. That was also a considerable income, and he had been envious for a long time. Now Liu Zhao's underground city in Pingayao has been divided up. As for the little money in Yunwan base, Lin Xianglin, Xing Feng and others in the city are proud of their status. They are unwilling to make a big fuss for that little thing. Liao was different. He didn't mind the money, nor was he afraid of hard work. He said hello to those companies and asked Changhe to take people to take over. At the same time, he also used this matter to test the bottom line of Bulju Bay. However, Changhe had been gone for a few days and there was no news. That's why Liao asked this question. Jiuying shook his head when he heard this. I tried to contact Changhe yesterday, but couldn't get through. Master, how about I go to the Yunwan base? No. Liao frowned and said, the old city has been uneasy recently. First, all the human traffickers we brought from the surface died. Not long ago, some bastards suddenly became ferocious and killed people everywhere. Now the local security bureau invites me for tea every day, as if these people were instructed by me. Who knows what strange things will happen next? I'm worried without you around. Jiuying nodded. Master, don't worry, Jiuying will definitely protect you. Liao said in a deep voice. You have also seen Bulju Bei, Yuan. Answer me honestly, who will win if you fight him to the death? Yuan thought for a while and said, if it were 2 years ago, he would win. Now, it's a 50-50 chance. Only 50-50. Liao sighed. If you can take down Yu Bei, maybe we can get some benefits. Since you are not sure, we can only let other families take advantage of it. At this time, footsteps sounded. The steward came back. Master, I just received an invitation. Liao was stunned. What invitation? This? The steward looked hesitant. Liao got angry and slapped the table. Don't hesitate, speak. The steward hurriedly said. It was sent by Mr. Yu Bei, saying that it will be in 2 days, on the Qingming festival. Master, please go to the Nangxin Buddhist hall to pay your respects to Mr. Liu Zhao. The hall was silent. Then Liao's roar rang out. Let me pay my respects to the surname Liu. How dare he, the surname Yu. Liu Zhao is not my father. Fuck his grandma. After venting for a while, Liao calmed down and called Qifei. It turned out that not only he received the invitation, even Qifei, Lin Xianglin and Mo Laogdi all received it. The content was the same. They all went to the Nangxin Buddhist hall in the old city on the Qingming festival to pay their respects to Liu Zhao. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 568 Natural Enemy. The business hall of Mongkok Hotel. It was the same hall as last time. When Liao, wearing a gold necklace, a black suit, a bloated waist and a strong Navo-rich aura, arrived, Qifei, Lin Xianglin and the old man surnamed Mo had already arrived. Everyone, I'm sorry. Sorry to have kept you waiting. Liao pulled a chair and sat down, picked up a cup of chrysanthemum tea, gulped down a few gulps, and then exhaled. Qifei, who was wearing a neat suit, gold-rimmed glasses, and missing a finger, looked at Liao with a serious face. Big Mouthly, didn't you send someone to check the Yinwen base? What's the situation? Liao shook his head and said, before I came here just now, I couldn't contact my people at the Yinwen base. I guess the situation is probably very bad. I have made the worst plan. The worst plan is that all of Liao's people will be killed by the surname Yu. The old man surnamed Mo leaned on his walking stick and sighed. It seems that the remnants of Liu Zhao are going to get serious with us. Letting us go to pay our respects to Mr. Liu, in fact, is to catch us all in one fell swoop. Qifei leaned back in his chair and looked at the other 3 people at the table. Then let's just ignore Mr. Yu. Besides, how can Mr. Liu have such a big face to ask the 4 of us to pay his respects to him? Is he worthy? Liao grabbed a handful of peanuts and threw them into his mouth, chewing while saying, this time I agree with Mr. Qi. Knowing it's a trap, why should we step into it? The old man surnamed Mo shook his head. I don't think so. If we don't go, it may give Mr. Yu a chance to defeat us one by one. Let's talk about it later. He looked at Lin Xianglin. Ms. Lin said last time that Mr. Zhao would take action. Lin Xianglin smiled and nodded. That's right. I have already told Brother Zhao Tong, and Brother Zhao said that Yu Bei is just a jumping clown. It would be fine if he lay down. If he dares to jump too much, Brother Zhao will teach him a lesson. The old man surnamed Mo nodded, looked at the others and said, since Mr. Zhao has come forward, I think we should go to pay our respects to Liu. By the way, help Yu Bei to arrange the funeral as well. In order to avoid this fishbone that he can't remove, everyone here will always have trouble sleeping. What do you think? Qifei and Liao exchanged glances, and then both nodded in agreement. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. When Liao and the other 4 gathered, several cars drove into Pingyao underground city and headed to the city along the dedicated passage. Luo Yan sat in one of the cars. Next to him, the bald Yu Bei said respectfully, Mr. Chigi, according to your instructions, the 4 surnamed Li have been asked to come to the Buddhist temple to pay their respects on the Qingming festival. Luo Yang nodded gently and looked out the window. Pingyao's construction style is very similar to Qingyang. It has a strong ancient style. but the buildings in Pingyao are more monotonous in color and feel solemn. It is not as bright and magnificent as Qingyang. Luo Yan's eyes moved, and when his sight swept to the distance of the underground city, suddenly, his pupils shrank violently. The scales on his body were suddenly stimulated. He almost entered the dragon transformation state. But in the past, when he entered the dragon transformation posture, he would naturally exude fierce flames and murderous intent. At the same time, he could feel the dragon blood essence boiling. But at this moment, not only was there no trace of murderous aura, but the dragon blood essence did not have the intention of boiling at all. On the contrary, the dragon blood essence seemed to be trying its best to hide itself, as if it had encountered some kind of natural enemy. Under the influence of the dragon blood essence, Luo Yan felt like turning around and leaving the city. However, this feeling and the abnormal movement of the dragon blood essence disappeared in an instant, as if it was just Luo Yan's illusion just now. All this happened in the blink of an eye. Yubei next to him didn't feel anything at all and continued to tell Luo Yan about the condolences. At this time, Luo Yan interrupted him, pointed to the place outside the window that made him feel unusual, and asked, "Where is that?" Yubei took a look and said casually, "Old City. Liu Zio's betting is basically there." Luo Yan's pupils have returned to normal. After closing his eyes slightly, he said, "We won't go to the old city. I have something to do, so I'll stay in a hotel in the city. Also, change the place. The condolence will be held in the city funeral home. You can choose a specific location and notify me later." Yubei looked confused, not knowing why Luo Yan changed his mind. He didn't know. Luo Yan trusted his feelings. There was something dangerous in the old city. He didn't even dare to use the Wu Wang burning eyes to observe. He was worried that he would be noticed. He now had only one idea. After getting things done, leave Pingyao as soon as possible. There is some danger lurking in this city. Huge danger. Old City, Qingyang Lane. In a small courtyard, someone pushed open the door and walked out a tall and burly figure. The man with red hair and red beard looked in the direction of the city. He squinted his eyes slightly, without saying a word. According to Luo Yan's instructions, Yubei arranged a room for him in a hotel in the city. At night, Luo Yan left secretly. When he left the hotel, he had changed into another outfit. He became a student of Basin Academy. The dragon elephant was too iconic, so he didn't bring it with him this time. He only brought a splitting long sword for self-defense. Walking on the long stone-paved street in Pingyao, holding the letter given by Dizeng, Luo Yan stopped from time to ask for directions. After going around in circles, he found his destination. A quiet courtyard. The most obvious sign is the peach tree that is taller than the courtyard wall. The name of the courtyard is Taowen. This is the residence of Ms. Yunrang. Luo Yan looked at this quaint courtyard for a moment and was sure that there was no one in it. He was about to leave and come back to visit tomorrow morning. Then he saw a car slowly approaching and stopped at the intersection. The lights went out, the door opened, and a figure came down from inside. Under the street lights, she was about 34 or 35 years old, with black hair casually scattered and light wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. But she was still well maintained, with smooth and fair skin. She didn't have the immaturity of a girl, but she had a maturity that girls didn't have. This very attractive woman, between her eyebrows and eyes, revealed a hint of evil from time to time. Especially those eyes. When she looked at him, Luo Yan actually felt a little bit of needles. "Little ghost, what are you doing in front of my house?" Holding a brown paper bag with some fruits in it, the woman came over with a fierce look on her face. Luo Yan took a deep breath. "Ms. Yunrong, good evening. I'm a student of teacher Wei Fenghe. The teacher asked me to come to visit you as soon as I arrived in Pingyao." The woman stopped. The evil spirit between her eyebrows and eyes was slightly reduced. She looked Luo Yan up and down. Then she laughed. "Little guy, you have been tricked. Fenghe will never let you say that. Did that guy surnamed D ask you to come?" Chapter 569 Jiuying Yunrang. Luo Yan didn't know where he had revealed his flaw. He was actually seen through by the woman opposite him. Fortunately, he has always been indifferent, and after going through so much, He has developed the skill of being calm even when facing a catastrophe. So he kept his expression unchanged and did not respond so as not to reveal his true colors. The woman named Yunrong snorted softly. Are you the son of D? The temperament is exactly the same. Even the way you look after being discovered is exactly the same. It makes me angry just looking at you. Suddenly, without further explanation, the woman rushed forward, holding the brown paper bag in one hand. This intense exercise did not cause any fruits to fall out of the bag. She was incredibly fast. As soon as Luo Yan saw her dive, she was already in front of him. One hand reached out, put two fingers together, and stabbed Luo Yan. Luo Yan closed his eyes slightly. The woman's two slender fingers seemed as if they were fragile, but they made Luo Yan feel dangerous. He knew that he couldn't be faster than the other party, and he didn't dare to show his transformation into a dragon. He could only use his skills secretly, showing a faint solar halo. Then he made a fist and smashed it. He used an iron fist to fight against Xiaoski. The woman said ha, obviously surprised that Luo Yan did not retreat but advanced. But she didn't retreat either. He stabbed with two fingers. Stabbed into the 3-inch solar light on the tip of Luo Yan's fist. The solar light on Luo Yan disappeared without a trace. The fists and fingers collided. Luo Yan felt a pain on the tip of his fist, as if he was stabbed by a red-hot knife. He instinctively retracted his fist, and looked again. There were two red marks on the tip of his fist. He knew that the opponent withdrew his strength after being hit. Otherwise, he would have broken his bones. Look at the woman again. She shook her fingers and said, really tough. You practiced viewing mountains and seas, right? So, you are really Feng Hua's student? Luo Yan nodded. Teacher Wei is still my mentor now. The woman looked Luo Yan up and down. The foundation was taught by Feng Hua, but the fighting skills have the shadow of D. Forget it. For Feng Hua's sake, you come in. She took out the key and opened the door of the Taowen courtyard. Luo Yan followed her footsteps and came to a small hall. The house was elegantly decorated with potted plants outside the window. There were also unique lacquer, bamboo curtains, calligraphy, and paintings. The woman put the paper bag on the table, picked an apple, and then threw it to Luo Yan. Luo Yan took it. Thank you, Ms. Yunrong. Stop. The woman looked like she had a headache. Don't call me Ms. I'm in the same class as your teacher, and I have to call him senior brother. Just call me Sister Rang. Also, Dizeng didn't tell you. Is my full name Jiuying Yunrong? Luo Yan shook his head, then took a bite of the apple with a snap. The fruit tasted slightly sour and sweet. Jiuying Yunrong crossed her arms and said, tell me, why did Dizeng ask you to come to me? Luo Yan frowned. Dizeng asked him to deliver the letter. But at that time, Dizeng said he had to wait until Jiuying Yunrong mentioned him before giving the letter to the other party. And this mention was obviously the kind of mention of missing and missing. Not like now. Suddenly, Luo Yan hesitated whether to hand over the letter. Jiuying Yunrong laughed. Did the D guy just want you to come and see me? Nothing else? Luo Yan thought for a moment and said, he gave me a letter. He said he would give it to you when you mentioned him. If you didn't mention him. He glanced at Jiuying Yunrong, but he didn't dare to say the rest. A hint of murderous intent flashed across Jiuying Yunrong's brows again. This guy is still very arrogant until now. If I don't mention him, he won't write to me, right? Okay, go. I don't want this letter. Luo Yan nodded and really turned around and left. He hadn't taken 2 steps. He heard the woman shout, you're really leaving? Stupid. As stupid as the D guy. How can you please a woman like this? Luo Yan turned around and saw Jiuying Yunrong shaking his head. He stretched out his hand and said, leave the letter. Okay. He took out the heavy letter and placed it on the stump-like table next to him. Then he said goodbye. After Luo Yan left, Jiuying Yunrong picked up the letter and a look of hesitation flashed across his face. Then she put it down again. Then she peeled an apple. Halfway through the peel, she applied a little force with her 5 fingers. The fruit shattered and the flesh fell to the ground. It's just a letter. What am I afraid of? She dropped the knife and walked back. She bit her lips lightly. Her eyes showed determination. She carefully tore the envelope open. 2 days passed in a flash. The Qingming festival is here. On this day, in the city of Pingayao, whether in the old city or the downtown area, whether in the Buddhist temple or the cemetery, people came and went to visit the graves and pay their respects. At the Xixian funeral home, Luo Yan arrived early. Today, he said he was here to pay his respects to Liu Zhao. In fact, Yu Bei had booked a morning hall. There were some flowers casually placed on the morning hall, and he didn't even bother to put up Liu Zhao's portrait. After all, today, although it was called mourning, it was actually to gather together the people from the 4 families, including Liao, who had divided the assets of the 3rd team of the Zuanming department. It was just to make it easier to catch them all in one fell swoop. Luo Yan sat in a corner of the morning hall, head bowed, with the two swords Xuan Lang and Jiuying at his side. The information of those families flashed through his mind. Liao, nicknamed Big Mouth Li, born in the market, hiding in the old city. He runs a black factory, redeems people, and exploits survivors on the surface. He is an ordinary person, but has a confidant named Qiu, who is at the intermediate level of cultivation. There are thugs in the underground city and mercenaries on the surface. Although he is a commoner, he has some strength. Qifei, a son of the Pingayao aristocratic family, is a concubine's son. He is engaged in the medicinal materials business and has a team of cultivators. He usually appears in front of Qifei as a partner. With the help of family power, Qifei's medicinal materials business is running well in the underground city. He has many contacts with middle-level figures and Pingayao officials, but most of the relationships are limited to the wine table. Zhao, a Pingayao merchant, his business involves medicinal materials, tobacco, bars and other fields. She is shrewd and well informed. She secretly supports several illegal armed organizations. She never married and has no children. She only adopted a son named Lei. After painstaking cultivation, this son has reached the level of the 4th intermediate level this year. Lin Xianglan was born in a humble family and was originally a prostitute. Later, she was spotted by a wealthy businessman and married into a wealthy family. A year later, her former lover died, and Lin Xianglan used all means to gain the family property. This woman is good at dancing with long sleeves. In a short period of time, she has become an upper-class person. She has had countless male lovers, and recently she has been favored by a powerful man named Zhao, which makes her feel like a fish in water. She was the leader in eroding the assets of Team 3. Footsteps were heard. Luo Yan raised his head slightly and saw Yu Bei coming to his side. He said softly, "Mr. Chigi, they are here." Luo Yan nodded slightly. At this time, a loud laugh sounded at the door. Then he saw a man in a suit and a gold chain. He showed the aura of an Avo-rish and walked in. "Brother Yu Bei, I'm not being a bitch. No matter what, Brother Liu was a respectable man when he was alive. How can the condolence be held in such a shabby place? Don't you have money? If you don't have money, tell your brother Li. Brother Li will definitely help you bury Boss Liu with honor." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.